Microphone test, Andrew Hayden Hall.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Good morning, everyone. I just invite everyone to take their seats. There's quorum in the room, so we're going to get started. Start with declarations of interest. Seeing none, confirmation of minutes 33 from February 20th, 2013, and confidential minutes 11 from February 20th, 2013. Carried. Communications as listed. Presentations, there's a short chair's verbal update, so we'll hold that and return to it. Item number 2, the update from General Manager of Transit Services, including the February 27th, 2013 winter storm debrief. We'll hold that and return to it. Item number 3, status update, Transit Commission inquiries and motions for the period ending March 12, 2013. Received? Item number 4, 2012 Q3 and Q4 Delegation of Authority Report, contracts awarded for the period July 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012 for transit services. Hold. That item is held by Councillor Blois. Item number 5, General Accounts Write-Offs 2012. Received? Received, thank you. Item number 6, Presto status update. There is an update, so we're going to hold that item and return to it. Item number 7, Paratranspo stakeholder consultation update. There are 3 speakers registered, so we're going to hold that item and return to it. And item number 8, Q4 2012 Transit Services Performance Report. There's a presentation, so that item will be held and we will return to it. Starting then with the chair's update. I just have one item that I want to report on, but a very important one. There have been several stories in the media recently on assaults that have taken place on OC Transpo, and I want to take a moment to address this issue. With more than 100 million trips taken by OC Transpo passengers every year, safety remains our top priority. OC Transpo has extensive security features to ensure the safety of our customers, including emergency phones located throughout transit stations, a transitway surveillance system with closed-circuit TV cameras, passenger assistance alarms on buses, and radios which link bus operators directly with the OC Transpo Control Centre. Both uniformed and undercover OC Transpo Special Constables patrol the transit system and are available to assist operators and customers around the clock in cooperation with emergency services such as fire, paramedic, and Ottawa Police Service. OC Transpo takes the safety of our customers very seriously and encourages everyone to report any concern that they may have. When I was approached by Julie Lalonde, a representative from Hollaback, Ottawa, in February of this year, I arranged a meeting between Ms. Lalonde, myself, the General Manager of Transit Services, John Manconi, and James Babe, the Manager of Transit Safety and Enforcement, on February 14th to discuss her concerns. OC Transpo has committed to working with Hollaback, Ottawa on an ongoing basis, and I want all of our customers to know that we are committed to working with anyone who has concerns or suggestions, as safety on OC Transpo remains our very top priority. That's my report, and now we'll turn it over to Mr. Manconi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Commission. Just we'll bring up the slide deck here. Madam Chair, my update focuses on the winter storm event of February 27th, so I'm providing some details to the Commission about what occurred that day. I want to start off by ensuring that we all have the same information as it relates to the weather conditions that day. And what you see in these next 2 slides come from Mr. Larry O'Keefe, our General Manager of Public Works. As you know, he issued a memo to Council about the conditions that were experienced throughout the city that affected everyone, not just buses, but all vehicle types. The first statement is it was a very challenging winter weather event. You may recall that the morning precipitation started as rain and wet snow, and it eventually switched over to ice pellets and snow at approximately 10 a.m. So right off the bat, the morning a.m. peak rush was affected. And as the snowfall intensified, the salt material that was being put down by Public Works could not keep ahead of the accumulation, and slushy conditions started to form throughout the system. By mid-afternoon, and this is where things changed significantly, the snowstorm stalled over the Ottawa Valley, and instead of passing through the area, it stayed in place, and the intensity of snowfall increased dramatically just ahead of our peak traffic period. And for that afternoon period, forecasts had anticipated a steady accumulation of 2 to 3 centimeters per hour during that time period. So it was expected that the afternoon commute would be a challenge. Here's where things changed significantly. For a 2-hour period from 2:30 to 4:30, the intensity of the snowfall was anywhere from 5 to 7.5 centimeters per hour, according to the system that Public Works was monitoring. And this is considered extreme, and when coupled with the fact that it came in the form of heavy, wet snow, and you all remember the moisture content in that snowfall, it became hard-packed and started to bond to the pavement surface. And from my Public Works experience, when you have bonding of snow to a pavement surface, it's just like your driveway. That's when you begin to lose the challenge of clearing to bare pavement conditions. So Public Works was doing an excellent job, but it was a very difficult event that was out there, and as the volume of traffic increased and vehicles of all types traveled over the fresh, wet snow, it compressed and further compacted and resulted in this thick snowpack that you all experienced, and the rutting and the ridges, particularly in the tire paths, and the washboarding effect, which is the rumbling strip effect of ice at intersection and acceleration points. And they're very difficult to plow off when you get to those conditions, and a total accumulation of 20 centimeters of heavy wet snow affecting all vehicle types, 4x4s, trucks, delivery vans, and so forth, not just buses. Other contributors that day were we did have numerous down hydro wirings that caused detours to our operation. Our O-train signals were impacted for a period, which caused some service delays. We had some water issues on Bank Street that required buses to be rerouted. And then we had tree clearing that needed to be done because of the heavy wet snow on the branches and some of the vegetation onto our corridor. And as we reported, there was our GPS system was impacted because there was a cable that was cut by a contractor, and that affected our customer information base, but also affected our control room. And we reverted to radio communications, and we set some very high volume numbers in terms of two-way communication between all our staff and our control room. Madam Chair, while there were challenges, and yes, there were delays, thousands of customers arrived to their destination safely that day, and safety is our #1 priority. We had delays in the 60 to 90-minute range, and then sometimes even more than that, to both conventional and paratranspo. Also very happy to report there were no major accidents and no reported injuries, and we want to make sure that we take that into consideration when we look at how significant that day was, and the transitway operated very well. Also, with respect to the number of stuck buses, and I know everybody keeps asking how many, but remember our GPS data was down, so we were relying on radio communications. The stuck buses were not necessarily buses that got stuck because of their own operation. They were in some cases behind other vehicles that were stuck, and many of them got out on their own and did not require a tow or a push. So I want to clarify that not every single bus that was affected by the snowfall needed to be pushed or towed out. Many operators and their experienced operators and their training, they were able to get out on their own. Yes, we did have concerns and complaints, but let's not forget about the excellent work that all our staff at OC Transpo did on that very difficult day, and I do want to thank each and every one of them throughout the organization. Madam Chair, we are on top of some of the concerns that we got. We are getting many compliments that have come through the organization. These are just examples of them. The first one sticks out for me in that one of our operators actually stopped a bus, went outside, and carried a passenger over a snowbank and into the bus, and obviously everybody on that vehicle was very impressed, and I can't thank all our staff enough for what they did that day. With respect to preparation of the event, our traffic incident management group was initiated. This group came out of the last time this occurred in 2005 when we had a similar event affected our transportation system. We did secure all and any available additional resource, and again I want to thank staff that came in. Some came in on their time off, management staff stepped up, and it was throughout the entire organization, all hands on deck. Buses and extra buses were brought in, bus operators, maintenance and facilities staff, customer service and public information, on-street and transit control supervisors, and special constables. Additionally, we brought in additional towing capacity, and a reminder, we don't tow a lot of the buses. They just need a nudge, and our public works partners do push our buses when we see them through our cameras, both at our control center and the incident control center at Loretto. Supplemental trips were added where possible. And lastly, I want to thank our public information and customer service staff who stayed, because of this severed wire, to 11 p.m., and they did that on a voluntary basis. Next, Madam Chair, members of Commission, I want to talk about our bus types, because there was this idea floating around that on certain weather days you should take a portion of the fleet off, particularly the articulated buses. And I want to emphasize, articulated buses are good vehicles. There is no criticism coming from me or the staff. They're used around the world. Everyone is challenged by weather events and snow events, particularly over 5 centimeters of snowfall and wet, moisture-laden snow. And you can just go on Google or look at, click in hybrid buses stuck on snow. You'll see from around the world that they're affected. So this is not criticism of these articulated buses. But they represent 38% of your fleet. And as the chair called them at the last time we talked about this, they are the workhorse of the fleet. They carry thousands of customers safely every single day on your system. So this notion of reducing or removing or modifying from service during weather events will greatly impact the number of customers you can serve in a day. And a reminder that on the 27th, all buses and all vehicle types experience difficulties. We did look, because we are open to ideas about whether or not we'd even contemplate removing articulated buses during an extreme weather event. And the logistics and the process associated with putting out those buses and all our buses is complex, and there would be a lot of issues that would be negatively affected, such as ensuring customers are aware of the service changes, changing operator reporting locations and work times, different trip patterns for operating staff, reducing route frequency or alternating bus routes, and redistribution of buses amongst garages, and postponing planned maintenance activities. So the minute you start to consider any removal of a portion of the fleet, you're impacting the entire network, the entire customer base, and it would be very confusing for customers, employees, and the system that we have. So let's talk for a moment about these articulated buses. As Mr. Watson calls them, they're pushers. Mr. Craig Watson from ATU 279. And the analogy is the motor and the power drain is in the back of the vehicles, and this has to do with everything from low floor design to how they're built around the world. And the analogy we put to it is, imagine you're towing a camper and the vehicle, the motor, the powertrain is in the back in the camper end of the vehicle that you're towing. So that's why they're called pushers. So during slippery conditions, they can be a challenge, and our operators are trained to deal with them and deal with all the circumstances that they're faced with in various weather conditions. Next, I want to talk about bus tires. There was a lot of dialogue in the media, and also I received emails from people saying, just put in winter tires onto the vehicles. What's important about winter tires is no different than when you buy tires for your own vehicle. You need to look at all the elements that drive the acquisition and the type of tire you're going to put on your vehicle. Fuel economy, the overall tire performance, the tire tread life, price, as we buy 7,000 tires annually at OC Transpo. And also for our passengers, noise reduction, vibration, different tire treads affect how those vehicles will perform. And we're always looking for the best performing tire. And I want to give the Commission assurances that we're presently conducting our own internal tests with tire manufacturers to meet our current mandate, and we'll have results on that later on this year. We are recognized by the major tire suppliers as an open organization that's innovative and looking forward to new ideas, so we will try any tire tread pattern that exists out in the marketplace. So by way of background, in terms of this notion of whether or not winter tires exist for bus transit companies, I want to start off with what happened after the 2005 snowstorm. At that time, the Transportation Committee directed staff to undertake a study of the feasibility of winter tires. And the Fleet Services Group that was in place at the time looked at varying tread patterns and depths, and a report to Transportation Committee concluded there were no bus tires available for either low floor or high, that we had some high floor buses at the time for operations in the City of Ottawa. And also, very importantly, it stated there would be no significant performance improvement with other tire types than currently in use for standard and articulated buses. We're currently reviewing that report. We're going to check to see if there's anything new that's changed in the marketplace. As it concluded, there's no available winter tire compound for transit vehicles anywhere in North America. So following the February 27th snowstorm, I directed the engineering and maintenance staff to further validate beyond what the NRC did. And I can confirm that we talked to other major transit authorities and that they are not using winter tires. We've confirmed with bus manufacturers that they are not aware of any transit authorities using winter tires. We've confirmed with our tire vendors that winter tires for transit applications do not exist. And most transit authorities are using similar tires and approaches such as retread that we do to that of OC Transpo. I want to talk about the European experience because I've seen those emails, I've reviewed the literature, our engineering staff have followed up. Winter tires are available in Europe but have not been used in Canadian transit applications. And the issue here is sizing differences, different standards, and testing protocols. And those are all very important because while they may be labeled a winter tire, the standard is not the same as here. And whether or not you get any additional gain for the premium of the acquisition of the tire, buying additional rims, changing them out, go back to the NRC report where they talk about snow depths in excess of 5 centimeters, we may not have seen any additional advantages. So that's what's important in that context. This slide, these are all the tires that we're currently testing, and we're zeroing in on a couple of preferred treads and retread approaches. In terms of what happened the day after the storm, I just want to remind the Commission that literally within hours after that very difficult day, we were back up to full operation. And at 8:30 the following day, 55% of our buses were running on time, with the remainder in the 10 to 15 minute delay range, and paratransport service was running well. There were a small number of canceled trips, and our real bus time arrival information and our GPS system to our control room was fully operational. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I want to assure you that we are open to any ideas that improves how we deliver our service. And I know some of you have seen this. Out of all places, there's a company in Australia that says they can convert articulated buses to four-wheel drive units. We are looking at it. Our approach to this is we need to be very careful, as you have a very good deal with New Flyer that has a 5-year maintenance agreement attached to it. We need to understand if we were even to consider this, what it would do to that. The manufacturer would have to agree, and there is no installed application of this device in the marketplace. So they're looking for someone to test it, to be bleeding edge in this area. Our approach to this is we'll look at it. We would encourage manufacturers. That would be the ideal situation where a New Flyer or a Nova Bus or one of those manufacturers take this on and test it and bring it to the marketplace. So next steps is we're going to continue to work with all our partners during, before, during, and after any of these events. We will continue to participate in the Traffic Incident Management Group, and we've also engaged our unions to solicit their ideas and suggestions. We will finalize the tire tests later this year, and we're going to work with tire manufacturers on tire improvements and practices, and we've signaled to them that we're open to any ideas or suggestions they may have. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manconi. There are questions, but there is a public delegation, so with the consent of the committee, we'll hear from the delegation first, and then we'll go to questions, okay? So our public delegation is Sharon Bowe, the Vice President of ATU, Local 279. Nice to see you here, Ms. Bowe. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. You just press the button and speak into the microphone.
Good morning, Chair Deans and members of the Transit Commission. Thank you again for the opportunity of allowing ATU Local 279 to address you on a serious issue. We at the ATU fully understand the impact that major storms can have on our service delivery. Our members take pride in trying to provide top quality service in all weather conditions. We are extremely proud of their efforts, and we would also like to thank our customers for their patience and support during these weather events. Wednesday, the 27th of February, was one of those days where all the conditions needed to create havoc occurred. Wet snow with ice forming underneath it on our roads creates almost impossible traction issues. Everyone needs to understand that Ottawa is not unique, and the same problems occur on all ATU properties that use articulated coaches in these same weather conditions. We at the ATU wish we could tell you today that no bus will ever get stuck due to snow again. But we are realistic. We know full well that with the right conditions, buses will get stuck, and unfortunately our passengers will be inconvenienced. The difference between Ottawa and all the other ATU properties when it comes to this issue is both the management and the union have recognized the importance of this issue and are willing to work together on solutions. All parties are looking at solutions to ensure that we can reduce the incidence of stuck and delayed buses to a minimum. We all believe we owe it to the citizens of Ottawa and understand their expectations. The ATU would like to thank all of our passengers for the compliments that many have expressed over how the operators handled themselves during these adverse conditions, and also those passengers who helped by any means to keep our service running. Winter is hopefully now over, and our expectation is that the public, the Transit Commission, and the media will hold both the management and the unions' feet to the fire on this issue, and that over the coming months we come up with a complete action plan to ensure every possible avenue is explored to minimize the impact that major storms have on our service. On a personal note, I drove a bus on February 27th, and the conditions were miserable to say the least. Driving a city bus is a challenge on the best of days, and on this day the combination of snow and ice made our jobs as operators very difficult. Like the professionals we are, we did our best to keep the service running, helping those who were stuck and covered trips that were delayed. When service is delayed, it is only natural for our passengers to be upset. The citizens of Ottawa are no strangers to winter storms, and when faced with challenges, they too team up to help one another, demonstrating community spirit that Ottawa is famous for. In closing, we believe that we can greatly decrease the negative impact that major snow events have on transit by working with all city departments and exploring all solutions. Example, how individual routes are addressed by road service operations, and better communications with our customers and operating staff. We are open to exploring all solutions and fully believe they can be achieved. Thank you again for the opportunity to address this Commission, and let's focus on the positives, not the negatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bowe, for being here, and I understand you were driving that day,
Yes.
So I guess firsthand you saw some of the challenges that we were confronted with. There are a number of people on the list to speak. Are any of them to ask a question to the delegation? No? Then thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
So our first speaker is Commissioner Blowis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Manconi, thank you for providing that presentation. And I think sometimes it's good to get that gap of time between the incident, because there's certainly a lot of us who are reacting on the day of the storm and that evening. And so having a bit of time to digest it and then getting an explanation in terms of how everything actually came together, that almost that perfect storm syndrome, including the timing. The one thing, I might have missed it in your presentation, in your previous role in this city, when you were looking after roads and that, we had a discussion about some of the problem spots. I don't know if you remember where it was buses that were basically backing up and blocking up. And there are a few locations that I think are well known, both within OC Transpo and within the surface operations. Have we figured out how to give those areas special attention in advance of these things happening? Because really, once that area starts bottlenecking or breaking down, the whole system breaks down. And I don't know if you addressed that in there, and I might not have caught it.
Yes, Madam Chair. No, that's a great point. I didn't touch on that, but what we're doing as part of the debrief is Mr. Charter is going to be looking at all the locations. Public Works does have those hotspots tagged, and they have an extra salter that they have to deploy at certain key areas and do anti-icing and pre-wetting and so forth. I think what will help this time around is we're going to get all the union groups, including the supervisors, to give us their locations, and we're going to put that into the mix. And it perhaps may be a longer list, but we'll work with Public Works to identify all those hotspots.
Right. And I do want to express my gratitude. I think the employees did a fabulous job under bad conditions, so thank you to AT&U.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Blows. Commissioner Crew.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. Just picking up on Commissioner Blowis's comment, I would also like to say a thank you to staff and to the members of ATU 279. Although there were difficulties faced that day that were inevitable, it's the first time my workplace has closed down because of snowstorm in over 10 years. One of the things that I did note in the media is a lot of stories of individual operators that went out of their way to do everything they could to accommodate and to make a difficult process better for our riders. So I do want to add my voice to that support. I just have one question. I also you commented on the articulated buses because of the perception that they have a particular difficulty. It occurs to me that this is the first significant snow event shakedown that our new fleet of double-deckers has experienced. I'm wondering if you have any particular comments on how they came through this event. Were there any surprising results? Did they do better or worse than other types of buses within the fleet?
The double-deckers, Madam Chair, performed very well. I think we had 2 that had an incident with them. I've heard from operators firsthand that it was great to be on them. They have a feature, the center axle can push down. They can engage that, gives them extra traction. Plus, it's a very heavy vehicle with a short wheelbase, so the traction was there. We had no issues with double-deckers. I saw them firsthand on the screens, and they performed very, very well given the conditions.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Crew. Commissioner Egli.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question has to do with the cable that was cut. We switched over to radio communication, as you said, but did we not have a backup system? I mean, it seems cables will get cut. So do we have a plan going forward so if something like that happens again that we don't lose all our GPS data?
Yes, Madam Chair. What happened that day is we did have a backup system. Unfortunately, there was some work that was done as part of some other corporate IT initiatives, and that backup system was not reinstated when they put that in there. So the debrief, which was held the next day, was make sure that the backup system is there, and also my direction to staff was I want the backup cycled through at least once a month or some time period that the IT experts can dictate. Very much like you cycle through a generator for a building. You cycle it to test it in great conditions so that you know it's there when you need it. Yes, there was a backup system. No, it did not engage that day. That was an issue that Mr. Rob Collins took full control of that day, and the backup system is now in place, and it will be practiced in non-storm events to make sure it's there for when we need it.
Just a quick follow-up question. You say work was done, it wasn't re-engaged, so how long were we without the backup system? Obviously it wasn't there on that day, but do we know how long it was not engaged for?
I don't have that information. I can certainly find out and follow up with you.
But you're telling me that's not going to happen again?
I never say never, but I'm telling you that the backup system is back in place, and we will, the direction to staff is to exercise the backup system. So simulate that the primary function is down and make sure the backup kicks in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Egli. Commissioner Kadri.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Manconi, first of all, I want to congratulate and thank all of the ATU staff, along with your staff and your office, for working with us on that day, on a what I would classify as a very trying day for everybody. And that didn't only relate to the OC Transport Service, but even, myself traveling on the road was a trying day, even for my own vehicle. But that's Ottawa. That's the reality of Ottawa. We get 4 months of this kind of weather in this city, And we are going to run into this problem this time and in the future. And I think public is aware of that. But the issue is, or the issue comes down to that feeling of, I guess, being stranded, or feeling of being left behind, or feeling of waiting outside for 60 to 90 minutes. I think, you mentioned that you're going to be working with other staff members in terms of looking at all the hotspots that Councillor Blois was talking about. I just want to make sure that we look at this issue from a complete perspective, and not just from, road clearance or any of that kind of, all the other issues that are related to that. The reason why I bring that out is in my area, first time ever, we had a bus stall or get stuck. The simple solution, or the problem that the driver identified when I was speaking with him, was the fact that the bus stop was placed on an incline, and when he stopped to let the passenger out, he couldn't get going again because of that incline. So maybe that's another aspect of this issue we should be looking at in terms of placements of those stops. If they're on near or on the incline, can that bus stop be relocated in order to service the community better and the public better? The other part of the equation, and people have talked about articulate buses being a problem. Just for clarification, my clarification of the number of buses that were out of commission that day because of being stuck, how many of those were Artics and how many of those were regular buses?
Madam Chair, I'd have to look to Mr. Charter to see if he's got that breakdown here. I don't have that breakdown here. I can certainly follow up with you if you like.
That's fair enough, Mr. Manconi, and I look forward to that. And if you can, forward it to the rest of the commission, that would be appreciated also. Because I think, the Arctic buses, as you mentioned, do become an issue in this kind of weather. But as I said earlier in my comments, every person using the road surface that day was affected, whether you're, delivering something or whether you're driving into work. So let's keep that in mind. And once again, kudos to all the staff that I thought did a great job that day. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Cadre, Commissioner Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, congratulations. I think you guys did a really great job, and it's difficult because we've had 2 great years of weather, and suddenly we're kind of walloped. And this isn't just a transit-related issue. Overall, we're really chewing through our snow budgets pretty quickly within the city as well. So I think this is a bit of an anomaly year, I hope. But I do have a question in regards to, there was a photo, and it lit up the Twitter sphere. It was a photo of some passengers pushing a bus. I just want to clarify, is this part of our policy where we allow this to happen, or is this something that should be reviewed in the future to make sure we don't have this happen again?
No, Madam Chair, we do not want passengers pushing our buses. It's not a safe practice, and while we thank them for being part of the team, the OC Transpo family, that's not what we want.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Tierney. Commissioner Hobbs, and welcome to the Commission.
Thank you very much, Chair. Deans, I just have a question. Well, first of all, I just want to comment as well as a bus user every day of my life. I really do appreciate what goes on every day. And on that particular day, of course, I was on the bus. I think I had more trouble walking that day, though, than actually being on the bus, because it was a really tough day. And these days, yes, they happen throughout the winter period, but maybe we experience about 8 events during that 4-month period. So my question, or just ask for your comment on, is to do with the cost of outfitting buses, doing something extraordinary for those 8 days a year. The winter tires, or equipping the articulated buses with front-wheel drive. There's a big cost to that. And it seems to me, when I listen to, I follow Twitter and I listen to a lot of the problems that day, that it was more around communications, that people don't know when their bus is going to come and they're waiting for 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And to my mind, I would rather see, because I do take the bus, I'd rather see some information at the bus stop that, there's nothing coming for 60 minutes, and then I can choose to go and pop into a store and do my groceries rather than waiting at that stop. So I'm just wondering if there's any consideration as well about more communications at maybe just major stops rather than the expense of doing the articulated changes.
That's a great question. Ms. Bowe talked about working together, and so we met last week as part of our debrief with ATU, and she brought up exactly that point. The GPS system was down, and if it ever happens again, how do we communicate with our customers? And what she recommended, and Mr. Charter's looking at that, is that if that happens again, we should have all administrative staff out to our major stops, assisting the supervisors with an OC Transpo jacket or vest on and saying, hey, I can help you. I can tell you that the buses are late. It won't be all 6,000 locations, but a lot of the major routes and a lot of the major stops. Information going out was a challenge that day, so the debrief picks up on that, and I believe great things happen when people communicate, and those ideas are going to come not just from management but from frontline staff. So exactly to that point is, if that happens again, how do we get information out there? So that's part of the plan that we're looking at.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hobbs. And seeing no further questions, I just want to talk about the uniqueness of this event, because I've heard a number of transit commissioners say that, it is winter in Ottawa and we expect a lot of snow, and we certainly do. And OC Transpo certainly runs our buses in snowy winter conditions. But this was a unique, the snow composition was unique and created special problems. I wondered if you could just address that.
Yes, Madam Chair. The uniqueness on it was on a couple of fronts. When you hit both the AM and PM peak and any snowfall, it's going to be a challenge for everyone. Public Works gets stuck in traffic just like everybody else, so they had every piece of equipment and resource out there. The intensity when the storm stalled out was very problematic, but the moisture content was a big contributor, because what happened is, I can't remember the last time we've experienced that much rutting and washboarding effect on our roads. That's because the snow was bonding to the pavement surface. And this is my Public Works world coming forward. You do not want snow bonding to your roads. That's when you get into repetitive salting, repetitive plowing, and Public Works work through the night, and that's why we were able to get our service out the next morning. They went through a lot of resources to make that happen, so that was the unique part of it. Very heavy snow, hard on equipment, hard on vehicles.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions received on the General Manager's update? Received, thank you. Item number 4 was held by Commissioner Blowis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick questions about about some of the contracts that went through under delegated authority, and not sure who's the right person, but the first item, when we went to the smart bus system and we converted to the next stop announcement, my understanding was there was going to be a one-time major cost. We get it installed, and then life goes on. I notice here there seems to be an ongoing annual cost to maintaining the voice or whatever. Can you explain to me what exactly that is and why? My assumption is once it's installed that the occasional route change would not merit this kind of a, let's say, a retainer, and that we have in-house capabilities to put the voice on. In other words, is this an annual cost, and how do we get out of it?
Through the chair, it's an as and when requested contract, so we will only incur costs when we call up the services. So it is for the odd changes that we would have to make to the system during the year.
Okay, so Mr. Manconi, there are very few odd changes. I'm surprised we're paying that for a few voiceovers or whatever. Surely we have somebody in-house who, in fact, I would say in-house, they know the name of the bus stop better, how to pronounce it better than somebody working for an agency. How do we avoid this in the future?
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Pepper to come up and talk about it. His staff actually coordinates the logistics behind this stuff.
Good morning, Madam Chair. In relation to the ongoing maintenance of NSAS and the voice, as it would be referred to, it's important that we have consistency throughout the entire system for all of the announcements. And so we have retained a consistent voice, and that's done through an agency. It's a professional, bilingual service that's provided, and we pay for that. And the number of changes throughout the year are in fact not small. You can imagine that for a whole number of reasons, including detours as well as ongoing improvements and changes within the system, those are cumulative. And so it's not that we would have one or two changes, but we would have additions to the system that are uploaded to the Next Stop announcement system on a quarterly basis.
But other than optimization, we've made very few changes. I don't see that you're indicating that there's a significant amount of voiceovers that need to be done. I don't see that. Even a detour is already built into the smart bus system. You wouldn't be going out and getting the voice to tell you we're doing a detour.
Again, I don't have a list of all of the changes that would have taken place, for example, in the last 6 months or 12 months, but there are regular changes to naming, names, and other announcements that we put on the system. For example, since arriving at OC Transpo, have asked to expand the use of the Next Stop announcement system for other kinds of announcements, including possibly going forward announcements that would help with our tourism and so on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having a hard time accepting this answer. Even the response about being consistent, the same voice. What happens when that voice is no longer available? We're going to redo the whole system with another voice? That doesn't add up to me.
The reason, in fact, that you would retain a professional voice and someone whose age is reasonably less than middle age would be that you have a long lifespan there.
Okay. I'll follow up with Mr. Manconi on that because I don't quite buy into that answer. The next one, there's a whole series of items, and they all relate to the smart bus system and clever devices, contracts with clever devices. And can somebody explain to me, are we locked in now? And there's no, like most of these ones will have an explanation about only supplier available or single source because of something or other. These ones are adding up considerably, everything from next generation technology harness, supply of configured Transpo in-bus technology replication systems for Presto. Are we tied in forever now with a supplier? Because that was one of the things that was raised when we went through that whole tender that got twisted into knots and everything else, that we would be locked in. So what's happening here now? And I see at least 6 or 7 of these items in the list.
Madam Chair, the system that we have, on board of the bus is unifying all the different systems together. If you look at the different items, a lot of them were due to the double-decker arrival. So, for example, the harnesses needed to be done for the double-decker. It was part of the contract, and it was given to Clever. Clever, if we were to change to a different technology, will mean that we will maintain multiple different vendors incoming with different systems, and that ultimately will cost us way more. So we'll have to maintain too many systems. So the strategy is to keep the number of vendors to minimum to reduce the hour cost of ownership of those systems.
So but the answer really is then we are tied into clever devices no matter what. And nothing against clever devices. I'm just trying to understand how this works. We went through a tendering process that was brought before the commissioner. At that time it was a committee, and there were lots of questions at the time, but we even have something in here and it's not related to the double-decker. I can understand the double-decker being in addition to the fleet. We have something like the custom manufactured transfer printer baskets for deployment on conventional OC Transpo fleet, but it goes to clever devices. If it's custom made, why would we go to just one company? Like, in other words, why? I'm sure other companies can do the same thing.
Madam Chair, the answer is yes, we are tied to the Clever company. It's our preferred vendor. It's a $12 million systems. The costs that you see here are $300,000, and it is from a wide range of things, from the stuff associated with Presto, also the double-deckers, and yes, the transfer piece that's linked to the system. It is an integrated system. Mr. Burns' team is involved in the procurement of all the change orders and the work that we do with them. But yes, to answer your question, we are tied to Clever Device. That is the integrated system, and probably one of the best in North America for bus applications.
Okay. So when it shows something like, for instance, to to configure in-bus technology replication for use by the Presto Group. Is that a cost over and above our Presto contract that we would show? Like when we get the Presto update, if I were to say, how much is this contract costing us? And yet I see references to Presto in other contracts. I'm assuming those are over and above the Presto contract.
When we bring the report in April on Presto, the financial staff headed up by our treasurer will have a complete roll-up of all the costs and linked to Presto, and all the elements of the Presto project will be charged to that capital account.
Including this one then?
My understanding is if it's a Presto project, it will be linked back to the capital account, and if it hasn't, I will assure you that it will get done that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Blows, Commissioner Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of those questions raised some points with me. First, on the changing of the voice thing. You say it's done quarterly, and I ran into this because they actually said the wrong street name in one of mine. I was told I have to wait several months to get it corrected. And do not have a way of when you have actual errors in the system, and this was a definite error, that we can make the correction more quickly, because you have to wait every quarter. Then, you know, we're giving people depend sometimes on those stop announcements to know the right street, and if they say a street name which is entirely different than the actual street, it's not even in that area, which is what happened in a couple in my area, then we had to wait to get them corrected. It wasn't as long as I thought it would be because you had a quarterly thing coming up, but it still took some time.
Madam Chair, I'm going to let Mr. Pepper answer that, but I just want to also let you know that you're all asking the same questions I've been asking. The opportunity to look at whether or not we need to be tied to a voice and so forth will be part of our rollout plan of the Confederation line. And because Mr. Pepper and I have these exact same conversations where I've asked, do we need to use the same voice? How long does it take to do corrections and so forth? So David, if you could just comment on that, please.
It'll be a two-part because I'll hand over the technical uploading of the material to my colleague, Mr. Delage. But there are regular changes. As you say, things happen and you need minor changes. But we also have changes in other parts of the city. For example, we also have other landmarks, commercial landmarks that change, and we have a current one happening right now with Zellers shutting down. So obviously those NSAS announcements that include major Zellers stores will be changed. And that has to happen on a regular basis. And those are built into our quarterly changes. But for other changes, there's a more challenging technical aspect, which I'll ask my colleague to answer.
The system, Madam Chair, is built in such a way that we are looking at the overall bus stop across the city, and we generate a file that is uploaded to the bus as a single schedule and bus next stop announcement. So we have to look at everything at once. We don't have the liberty of inserting only one piece of information in the system.
Well, I look forward to the review that that Mr. Manconi said, because that may resolve some of the things that you're talking about. The other question relates to the whole clever devices thing, which caused me a lot, as well as Councillor Blois, a lot of anxiety the last time, the way it was handled. We were told at the time that, yes, for the same stops announcements and the things that went with that, you'd have to use the same system. But we're looking at adding different things to that. For example, having at the actual bus stop, the next bus coming, all these kind of things that are in the future. Does that mean that we are locked into clever devices for those as well, or can we have an open tender that would get the best bang? Because we did not get the best bang for our buck with the clever devices. You may not know all the details, but those of us on the Commission at the time did. And then the way in which another one was disqualified for reasons that did not seem reasonable, and since then we've changed our procurement so that wouldn't happen again. But I don't, if we're tied to one supplier for a whole bunch of things, that means you're not going to be able to get necessarily the best product at the time or the best price at the time.
No, Madam Chair, I'm happy to advise that we are open. So for the display boards at our Transitway stations, that's through Pattison with the contract they just won. So you're not locked in throughout the whole IT infrastructure that runs OC Transpo. There are other options.
Can we find out sometime which are we locked into and which we are not?
Madam Chair, we've committed to the IT review report that's coming to this Commission, and certainly we can incorporate that in there and have that dialogue if you like at that.
I would like to see that then. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilkinson, Commissioner Reglai.
Just a couple of quick follow-up questions on the voice issue as well. There were some issues in terms of some buses on my route in my area as well, and I guess a two-part question. What can you give us an idea of what the total time commitment is to come in and do this voice work, and what the total cost is over a year to pay for the voice work?
My understanding, and I'll have to, if we need further detail that I may not have, this file I have overall responsibility for, and I've spoken with my staff about it, but that level of detail and how many hours each year we've done, the system has only been up and running for 2 years now. And so the bulk of the work was done at the outset of the contract, and the upgrades or additional work is booked periodically. It's not. I don't believe that we do it on a piecemeal basis. That it's rolled up because, again, to push out the new announcements is done on a quarterly basis because it's sent out, as Mr. Delage indicated, as one file. To go and simply change something the next day is not possible. To upload that to the entire fleet. And that's the discussion that, Madam Chair, that Councillor Egli and I had with relation to the upgrade at the end of October, I believe it was, or the end of the month when we had the issue in his ward. And so the amount of time we can come back and give you an indication of what the breakdown is, that data is certainly available.
What's the total cost per year?
Again, I don't believe we've been through a full year since the original work, and if we have been, I can get that information. So we may not have an indicator yet, but I think the contract that you see in the report today would be a pretty accurate indicator of what we would be expecting.
I guess where I'm going with this has it been explored for better flexibility and consistency and everything else? Is it possible to have somebody who already works from OC Transpo for that to form part of their job description? So we have them on site, we have them available, they know the system, they know the routes and everything else. Is that a possibility?
That has been considered and was ruled out, and we can explain that if you require further information. Again, in terms of the nature of the work, the talent, in terms of the use of a professional voice, and I think that certainly the feedback we receive from our riders and those of us who use the system is that the voice and the pronunciation and so on in both official languages is something that requires a certain expertise and speciality, which is why we've gone with the professional voice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Egli. Seeing no further questioners, can we receive this information? Received? Item number 6, Presto status update. Mr. Manconi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to ask Mr. Hollis and the finance staff to join me. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Commission. This is the second update since you approved the System Readiness Deployment Program, and we're here to provide you with some updates. I'm happy to report that there are no major concerns that need to be reported to the Commission at this time that we're aware of. We are working very hard on all fronts to prepare the report for April 17th, where we'll be bringing all the information through the 7 success criteria and all the associated details and our recommendations going forward. With respect to the numbers, good increases in all areas, and it's very positive. The monthly pass uses, or cards use overall is up. Monthly passes and e-purse also, and if you're wondering why e-purse is up, that's people starting to understand the functionality of the cards, where you can load a monthly pass and then also have some e-purse there if you need it. Card registration is up, large volume of transactions, and very happy to announce that the tap ratio is greater than 99%. What that basically solidifies is that the card readers on the buses are performing performing well, and there are no known new issues that we're aware of at this time. STO interoperability is also functioning well. From the customer service lens, our customers have not raised any significant issues since your last update. Visits to the OC Transpo website have returned to normal levels, and staff continue to monitor social media channels and respond and assist our customers as needed. With respect to our customers, we want to thank them. They've embraced this system, and they've been very helpful in terms of us having a good understanding of the issues that we need to think through for this significant program. When you add up the 13,500 Next On cards that were distributed and the 2,000 family and friends cards that are in use, we're happy to report that over 53% of those cards are in use. That is a good number, and we're pleased with that. There are two remaining educational elements that we'll address in the April report. That deals with the overdraft charge. If you tap your card, in this case prior to February 1st, and you didn't wait the 24 to 48 hour period after loading their product. And then the transaction completion wait time. This is not on tapping. This is on the wait time required when ordering a pass or e-purse online. Madam Chair, at the last commission, you asked for what are the stats of the Presto Call Center. The Presto Call Center, operated by Metrolinx, has received approximately 1,800 calls. There were just over 800 that were customer errors made. There were Toronto-based calls. They shouldn't have gone through the menu that says, press 1 or 2 for Toronto versus Ottawa. So we're dealing with about 1,700 calls. And what's important about this slide is these are all inquiry-based type of calls. There's nothing problematic that we've seen or that Presto's concerned with. There's no significant trends in terms of a negative issue brewing through the customer interactions. So it's good, healthy calls that are coming through looking for information from Presto. Similarly, with the OC Transpo Call Center, about 178 calls in February, not a large volume, but all inquiry types of calls, and nothing indicating that there's significant problems or trends that we need to be concerned at this time. Next, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to the Treasurer to cover the next two slides, and then Mr. Hollis will finish off with a slide from his view.
Thanks, John. So one of the criteria for acceptance is, of course, to have a robust back office with respect to the financial processing. And we've seen significant advancement in this area over the last little while. On February 9th, we had a new software system put in place for dealing with the sales and service centers, the cash registers that they're using. And this addressed a number of our requirements. Over the weekend, there was another update to that particular software, and there's a number of items that we were looking to see addressed with that particular change. We will be testing this over the next couple of weeks, but we're looking for issues around the coding of refund, more detailed sales transaction. We have to have a system in place to allow us to do reconciliation with the school boards and a number of smaller items. So we will know within the next couple of weeks whether the upload that happened over the weekend was address these issues as well. There's one item that we are still looking for, and that's some exception reporting on open end-of-day sales for reconciliation purposes. That will be coming within the next couple of weeks. So, and we continue to validate the accuracy, completeness of the financial transactions on an ongoing basis, but I can report that it's been very positive to date. With respect to the payment card industry compliance, Metrolinx expects to be compliant by March 31st. They actually were hoping that what they would be able to report they were today, but unfortunately that did not happen. But there is a significant advancement in this area as well. They have done, they've scanned all of their systems for vulnerabilities and identified places where they either external or internal facing vulnerabilities need to be addressed and remediated by March 31st. They've updated all of their policies and procedures, and they've completed their PCI training for their employees. When they give us the accreditation at the end of this month, we will be be the OC Transpo will be the first Presto PCI compliant system in the province. So again, positive results to report on that front.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. From a Presto perspective, we've been working very closely with John and his team since the last Commission meeting, and we continue to track on schedule to meet all of the criteria and metrics for the 7 success factors, and we will be compliant and be able to record that in the April Commission report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now that concludes the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There are 2 speakers. I'm going to go to those first, and then we'll hear from members of the Commission. So we'll start with Daniel Oikle. Good morning, Mr. Oikle. You have 5 minutes to address the Commission. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I did send an email in regards to the Presto and my experiences with it. As I noticed that there was a bit of a delay getting on the bus because I had to stop my chair and tap the card, which the original idea was you can go by it about 7 centimeters is what we were told. Also, and whenever you board a bus and you're tapping the card, it's telling you how much more time you got left on it to use, like an hour and a half, like a transfer type of deal. Well, I thought the card, I'd be able to give it to a person back me to use it, and a person after that if I wanted to, and I'd be charged on my card for it. But apparently not. So this means that myself and 3 others that want to use it, because the card's supposed to be transferable, that's $260 a piece gone. So if you want to keep on adding that up, so I'm just wondering if there's any upgrades to that. Also, on the website, when I applied for the card, I couldn't go on the bus pass thing from the site. And I went to OC Transpo, the Saint Laurent office. They told me that they're still working on all the difficulties. I'm not sure if it's fixed yet or not. I haven't tried it. My guess it is after what I've heard here. Otherwise, the Presto card is a good idea, but people in wheelchairs, it's not too convenient because we got to hold people up to tap that card. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oikle. Don't go away just yet. I'm wondering Mr. Manconi, could you just address the issue of the sharing the card with a number of passengers riding at the same time?
Yes, Madam Chair, that functionality is there and it is working, and we'd be happy to work with the Speaker I want to hear the issues firsthand, because this is news to us. The functionality is most definitely there, and Kathy Riley, our accessibility specialist, is here also, so if there's an issue about proximity, the meter, do they need to be adjusted a bit, we'll work with the resident customer.
So in order to address the hour and a half, you would just need to get a transfer, is that correct, if you're going to tap again for someone else to use it?
I'll ask Mr. Pepper to explain that.
I think it's important that, can we get one clarification from the Speaker, Madam Chair? Is he using a monthly pass and then using his e-purse to pay for additional members on the bus ride?
No, I didn't get, for the month that I had it, I didn't even know that you can put your bus pass on it. I found out this later. I was paying $20 at a pop. Total cost of me is $60 for the month of February because of that, and I didn't know about the pass until I went to OC Transpo and asked them about it, and they said yes, and because I get the $35 one, I have to re-register.
Okay. So thank you for the clarification. In the case of someone who has money in e-purse on their Presto card, all they need to do is simply tap and take their fare off, and then ask the bus operator to add that they want to pay for their friends behind them, and the bus operator will press a button for a companion fare, and when that person receives their companion fare, they will be issued the transfer. So if the gentleman is using his Presto card, he will keep his Presto card, and his 2 companions who facility pays for, each of those individuals would receive a transfer. The monthly pass is available both online and in person to be put on the Presto card. There was a brief time on January 18th, I believe it was less than an hour, when passes were not available, but that was, again, a very short period that will be covered in the April report.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. Mr. Oracle, don't go away yet. There are a couple of questions, starting with Commissioner Wilkinson.
I was on for it later on. Not for him. No.
Okay. Commissioner Tierney. Oh, we're all good. Thank you again, Mr. Oracle, for being here. Our next speaker is Catherine Gardner.
Thank you very much. I'm going to keep this short today. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. In regards to the Presto, I have a Presto card for myself. I have a Presto card for my granddaughter. In regards to the website, it's still saying that the Presto card is for ODS people only, ODSP people only. The Community Pass is available for people who use Power Transpo and or who are on ODSP. There is a stigma attached to it because people think that everybody that has a Community Pass is on ODSP. I'm just wondering if on the website that can be changed. Also, when I went to get my Community Pass at the station, they told me that I'd have to go home and get my ODSP papers. I told them that I was a registered Paratranspo user, at which time the person told me, I'm sorry, Paratranspo people can't use this. It was after somebody else came on. I said, if you go on your computer, you will see that I have Paratranspo. So it was all worked out in the long run, but people going there, if you're a Paratranspo user, especially now that people who use Paratranspo for winter, some only get it for winter-only service, they're going to be coming off that service next month. So if this Presto card works and it's going to go forward, we'd like to make sure that everybody that qualifies for that pass can get it. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gardner. And there are a couple of questions, starting with Commissioner Wilkinson.
So, Catherine, are you able to, you're not using the Presto card when you're using Paratranspo right now, just when you're using the regular bus service, because we're waiting on that report coming back. Is that right?
That's right. It's very frustrating because I can't use it on Paratranspo even though I have a receipt showing that I have paid for a Community Pass.
Yeah.
So when I go on Paratranspo, this month for March, I ended up getting the Community Pass paper pass. But any other time, like in February, I used Paratranspo and only used tickets when I was being reimbursed for my fares from other people.
Okay. Because the staff are, because of your request on that before, staff are working on a report of how we can handle it with Para, and we're expecting that in a month or two. And I'll be following up with them on that to make sure it comes. In fact, I have several times already. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson, and thank you, Ms. Gardner, for being here. Okay, now we'll go to questions to staff, starting with Commissioner Wilkinson.
Start off on your display on page 2, you say there are 8,226 cards in use, but only 7,902 registered. How can you use the card if it's not registered?
Madam Chair, registration is not mandatory. That is a security feature that we encourage people to register their card so that in the event that you lose it, nobody else can use it. You just call in or email in and it's an enhanced security feature. We will, in our information to customers, be encouraging them, as we did in the initial load, to register. It's an enhanced security feature that people should take advantage of.
Can they register it when they go to put money into it at one of your centers? At the OC Transport places?
Madam Chair, if you're registering your card, you would do that on the web. So we would not register your card at a sales office, no.
But some people don't have access to the web, which is why they're going to the sales office. That seems to me to be rather undermining their ability to have that protection.
In those cases, we obviously work with individual customers. We have had situations, and in our community outreach, in fact, those are things that we are identifying, ways in which we can assist customers in that regard, as well as working actively with libraries that do have access to internet where they would be able to have enhanced support, if you will.
And even doing all of that, there's still going to be a small number. So if you could think about how we might be able to handle those perhaps at a certain time at a service center or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there's any customer who requires that level of support, that is something that we would have absolutely no problem doing.
Okay. Now, there was some talk about the load time getting on that was raised there too, getting on, and then on slide 4, what do we see? The tapping, the prior to loading and things of that nature, I can see that happened. But the biggest problem, and you've mentioned it a little bit, but the wait time when ordering it, a pass or an e-purse. I've had a number of complaints of this. I'm sure you have had many of them as well, that people loaded their card and 24 hours later they went to use the bus and they got charged again. Sometimes I know one of my staff actually went over to the office to load her card so she wouldn't have that delay, because she at least knew about it. But when you buy something at a store and you pay with a credit card, you take the thing you bought home. You don't have to wait for 48 hours to take your groceries home. And is there some way we can have more, I'll call instantaneous ability on that, which is if you turn out the card is not approved, then you'll cancel it and they have a negative on their bill, as opposed to having them wait? Because a lot of people forget I myself included, to refill their card until almost the last minute. Is that possible? It's just that is one of the major complaints that we're getting right now. At least I am.
We're receiving some people's experiences where they are having that problem. The piece of education we're trying to convey to customers when they load the product online, when you buy a monthly pass or put money on your Presto card online, we then offer our customers over 900 remote locations where they can then pick up that parcel of a monthly pass or e-purse. And we do not have a continuous connection to those 900 remote locations. Unlike other places where you might go and load product on a smart card, the continuous connection is through the internet right there. But we are allowing our customers to pick up their purchase at any one of these remote locations. So that's why the 24-hour lag time, and Mr. Delage can speak to the technical aspects of that. In our experience, as we've done the load test over the last 2 months, customer education is very quick, and people are very much adapting their behavior in the same way that if you know you need to ride the bus tomorrow and won't have time to pick up your tickets at the local grocery store because it's not open, you should buy your tickets today. So similar issue, that you would load your card in advance, remembering that it'll take 24 hours for that load to appear on your card, unless you do it in person at a sales office.
Well, can you guarantee the 24 hours? Because some have been longer than that and still had it bounce. And they said 24 to 48 hours is what they say on the website, I think.
That's correct. Our current guarantee is 24 to 48 hours, and I believe technically we're trying to improve that. I wouldn't want to speak to that directly.
Okay. And on the school board ones, are they giving the students the Presto cards? Is that what's happening at this point? Are we into that in this part of this study right now?
Madam Chair, can I clarify if we're talking about the school board cards that are issued through the school transportation authorities, or just students in the school system?
Because it says school board reconciliation report. Is that just a report that's being developed and they're not actually using it yet?
Right, that's relating to the school board cards, and we are continuing to work with the school board on the delivery of those cards for the fall, and we will be doing a test with them after the April Transit Commission meeting.
Okay, so that's just setting up the system at the moment. Okay.
That's correct.
And I take it the U-passes that the university students are the same way, but they are going to have to still continue to use their university ones, I understand, and not the Presto card. Is that correct?
No, Madam Chair. After April 30th, the 2012-2013 U-Passes will expire, and as with past practice, those students will revert back to OC Transpo Fare Medium. In the past, it was a paper pass. For this year, it will be recommended that they acquire a Presto card, and you'll see more on that in the April Transit Commission report.
I'm talking about when the U-Pass comes back in September. When they're on a U-Pass, and they're not expiring then.
No, we will be then you will issue new U-Passes, and it'll revert back to the single U-Pass bus pass,
which has a
photograph attached to it.
Transferable then, the same way as it is now.
It is not transferable because it has photo attached to it, which is one of the reasons to protect from fraud, because the U-Pass is a deeply discounted benefit for those who subscribe to it.
So they will not have Presto cards?
Not for U-Pass purposes,
right,
no.
Okay. And the PCI compliant, what do you mean by PCI? I know what PCI is. What do you mean by the compliant report?
As part of being able to claim to be PCI compliant, there are a number of tests that have to be put in place, and you actually get a quality insurance inspector comes in, and he goes through all of the criteria, and he asserts that you are in fact compliant. So
what is there? What do you have to do to be compliant?
Oh, there's a number of things. Mostly it has to do with how credit card information, how it's kept, how it's stored, how it's transmitted, your rules around receiving that information. That's what it's all based around, is making certain that if you have credit card information, there is minimal chance that you will ever lose that information or have it become dispersed within even within your internal office. So it's all around control of that information.
So this is how we're showing that we're keeping the security for the individuals on their credit cards then?
That's correct.
Okay. And it went over the multi-use one. Are you going to get some information out? The first time that I had heard you could do it that way by asking the driver. So, and I have a Presto card, so if I was taking my husband with me to the game, rather than him having to put his $2 senior money in, which he does by cash, I could have had him pay that. Is the $2 fare for seniors on the Presto card now?
Currently it is. Those fares will be amended with the July 1st fare table.
Yeah, well, whatever the fare is for a senior. He pays the cash, he doesn't use it very often. I have a senior's pass. So I could use my pass, and I could ask the driver to take his money, his payment off my card when we're traveling together.
That is correct.
Okay, I didn't know that before, and I think it's something we need to get that information out, particularly when we go to broader use of the card. Thank you.
If you have neighbors.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson. Commissioner Eglai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very glad to hear things are still going the way they should, but I have this nagging concern that of the cards we have out there, the 15,500 cards, we only have 53% usage. And my concern is, should we be worried when we go system-wide that when we're giving out free cards, only 53% of them are being used? Are we going to have the uptake that we hope to have when we're actually asking people to purchase the cards and come forward? So, I mean, we were very happy we got them distributed, but they don't seem to be being used. And so do we have any explanation? And again, do we have a concern when we go system-wide that we're not going to have the buy-in that we want to have?
Madam Chair, we're confident we're going to have the buy-in. When you look at the various segments of the target customer base, there will be a clear advantage to those people that traditionally line up for bus passes and so forth. So that's a good chunk of our business. We want to certainly accentuate the benefits of not having to go buy tickets and paper products and carry cash around. So the e-purse feature, and as you just heard Commissioner Wilkinson say, she wasn't aware of the fact that you could have some e-purse on your card and pay for others. So the doing that transferability, we could speculate for days as to why it's 53%. We think that's positive, and we certainly want to drive up the use. There are some people that in that distribution, latched onto it's free. Well, all 200,000 cards will be free. That was the direction that we were given. But it's free, and we want you to use it. We suspect there's some people that are waiting to see that it's gone through all the issues that were addressed and how it's performing. But certainly, if we go to full deployment, there will be a strong focus on here are all the benefits. Use the card, and also it's shaping our thought process on how the distribution should roll out and what we give people and what we inform them on in terms of that. So overall, we're focusing on making sure that we get cards out that get used.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, this sounds like great news. And just looking at the quick math, it appears like a 300% increase in transactions. So people are voting with their feet. They're using them a lot more. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I've even been using my pass without any issues, so I'm quite happy to see the direction we're going in. I will be looking for your final word in April. I think April's a big meeting, and I have a lot of trust in you, John. I know you're not going to sugarcoat things. You're going to tell us straight up. I guess my question is Metrolinx going to be in attendance at that April meeting?
Yes, they will.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Tierney. Commissioner Crew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really one quick question. Well, first of all, I do observe we're now a month away from that April meeting. I've seen a lot of progress in these monthly updates, which I've greatly appreciated. At the update that we were provided with in both January and February, the most significant of those 7 criteria that we're still having a problem related to the handheld card readers and proof of payment enforcement. You'd indicated at the February meeting that I believe that that both the problem had been identified and that there was a software fix that was going to be implemented. Can you comment specifically on our progress in the last month on that outstanding issue, which is one of our 7 success criteria?
Yes, Madam Chair, we've made very significant progress with the handheld units. There was a code drop that improved the performance significantly. They are performing their functions. We have another code drop coming up to take it to the next level because, of course, our goal is to have the units performing well, and we're confident that they will.
And I trust, again, not being a particular technical guy, but by code drop you're meaning effectively software updates that are done from time to time. There's nothing, I take it, inappropriate about the fact that code drops are presumably always going to be continuing, even once we get the system fully in place.
Yes, that's actually a very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. It's no different than your PC at home. You get code drops from Windows on a regular basis. So they're system upgrades, and they will be part of the continuum.
I hope as system upgrades that, unlike my Windows at home, at least we will be requesting them and authorizing them, as opposed to my computer telling me I have to have them. And so I trust then at this stage you are seeing no issues with any of the 7 criteria for success that we'll be examining in 1 month's time.
As I said in my opening comments, there's no areas of concerns that we'd want to raise to the Commission at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Crew. Seeing no further questions received on the report. Thank you. Item number 7, Paratransport Stakeholder Consultation Update. There is no presentation on this item, but there are a number of speakers, so we're going to go straight to the list, starting with Christy Smith-Worthylake. And Christy will be followed by Ruth Mohammed.
Can everybody hear me all right?
If we could move the microphone a little bit closer to her, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes. First of all, I'd just like to thank the Commission and the Chair for allowing me to speak. And I'd like to compliment Paratransport on the effectiveness and efficiency of the consultations held in November and December. They were highly comprehensive and allowed a lot of time for individual input, which was very helpful. The only point I'd like to make is that there wasn't any discussion that the buses needed shoulder belts in the seats. I'm having a baby in May, and my understanding from researching car seat technology is that booster seats need to have shoulder belt technology. Both my husband and I use both conventional transit and paratransport, so it would be very important for us when transporting our child as she gets older that there would be shoulder belts on the buses so that we could transport our child safely. Not only is this important for people in our situation, which I realize may be atypical, but it's also important for members of the general paratransport public who may have limited talents or issues which require them to use a shoulder belt, and it's a safety issue more than anything else. Shoulder belts, from my understanding, have been proven to be a safer technology than the lap belt that is currently the only option for paratransport users, at least the ones who can use seats. There are shoulder belts for individuals who use wheelchairs and choose not to transfer out of the wheelchair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Smith Worthy Lake, for your comments. We appreciate your positive comments. Ms. Riley, we were having some difficulty making out everything. I just ask you to paraphrase so everyone knows exactly the point Christy was making.
Sure. Christy's just concerned that there was no mention in the report of shoulder belts for the seat belts Firstly, for everybody who uses para, it's better securement to have a shoulder strap than just a lap belt to hold them securely in the seat. And as well, her and her husband are expecting their first child in May, and in order for them to have the child car seat, it's all right when the child is up to 22 pounds, but after that, the requirement is that they'll have to use a child seat that has a shoulder strap to connect it, and she's concerned because that will be one of the ways they'll be transporting their child.
Are there any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. Our next speaker is Ruth Mohammed, and Ms. Mohammed will be followed by Nathan Hodge. Good morning, Ms. Mohammed. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for presenting this process for us. I really appreciate that. I'm part of the bariatric community. Bariatric is a Greek word, baros, meaning heavy, and atrix, meaning medical treatment. We are individuals who have health limitations, lack of mobility, and environmental access due to our physical size. Since I entered this room, I am sure most of you have already labeled me with stereotypes. Lazy, ugly, slow, she eats too much. No, no, and no. Most bariatric people have a medical condition causing the issue. Mine is lipedema. Depression and isolation are huge issues for many bariatric people who do not have proper housing and good medical care. Transportation plays a huge role in this catch-22. For 2 years, I have not been able to use paratranspo, and for 8 years, I have not been able to use the regular OC transpo transportation buses. How does this impact the bariatric community? If we have a 911 emergency, we have an option of the bariatric ambulance. But if we want to get a flu shot, an allergy shot, visit a family or a doctor specialist, we have no transportation. Not to mention groceries, a pair of shoes, or a mental health break, like a movie, a coffee with a friend, maybe a hockey game, or a New Year's Eve party. On behalf of the bariatric community, I'm appealing to this committee to please consider 2 bariatric vehicles when the new vehicle purchases are made. Persons needing this service could have a B attached to their ID number for easy identification. My quality of life depends on my independence. Bariatric quality of life depends on independence. Transportation is a necessary part of our independence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, we'll move to our next speaker, Nathan Houch. Nathan Howe, followed by Therese Dupuis.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Starting now?
Please, you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Nathan Hauk, and I am here on behalf of the Champlain Spinal Cord Injury Solutions Alliance, supported by Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, formerly the Canadian Paraplegic Association Ontario, and I also sit as a member of the Seniors Transportation Committee of the Council on Aging of Ottawa. And first and foremost, I just want to say to the Commission that we really do appreciate having had the consultation process back in December. We do believe that consumer input is incredibly valuable and will achieve our outcomes of the kind of service that we all want to see within Ottawa. Just in terms of some of the core themes that we would like to pull out, one of the major issues for our clients is the challenges around lack of advanced booking. So you can call early in the morning for the impromptu ride, but unless you have a regular ride, such as for employment or for other social purposes or what have you, it can be very difficult to, for example, make your medical appointments and so forth. And we do consistently hear of people having to cancel medical appointments and so forth because paratransport is not available on the day in question or with the advanced booking just the day before. And one of the other things that we would also recommend taking a much closer look at is the process of online booking, as you will see with the Toronto Transit Commission for the Handytrans or Wheel-Trans, in Toronto. And the other piece that we also just wanted to reiterate is the need to provide an option for those consumers or Ottawans who have bariatric condition. As we know, one of the primary modes of transportation for people who have bariatric conditions is EMS medical transport. It is not cost efficient, nor is it consumer focused. So we would believe in having some of those buses be able to have that option. Another theme that has also been touched on is, and you'll find this in the report, is suspension issues with the buses themselves. And we certainly appreciate paratransport's recognition of that. However, we are concerned that you will not achieve the outcomes you're looking for unless consumers can try before those buses are purchased. If, due to procurement issues, that is not possible within Ottawa, we would suggest that some consumers, through city expense, be able to go to a specific jurisdiction or city where those buses are in use, and they can provide that feedback. We know that the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the City of Regina has allowed some of their members to attend the CUTA conference to provide their input, so it would not be unique to Ottawa to doing that. And one of the other sort of final comments that I have is just around the whole revenue piece for paratransport. And this is perhaps a bit outside the scope of the report itself, but it's a comment that deserves mention, and we put it forward to the Building a Livable Ottawa consultation. And that is the revenue projections for paratransport. We know that the past official plans have talked about maintaining service. We believe that they need to augment service to meet the realities as we see forward, which is that many rides cannot be accommodated. And in this vein, we look forward to the broader consultation of the eligibility criteria and so forth that will proceed from there. And again, we are looking forward to being able to proceed and find that customized outcome that we're all looking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't go away. Mr. Hogg, lots of good points. We appreciate that. There is a question. Commissioner Blowis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan, I'm looking at the report, and I guess you really capsulize sort of what the issues are, especially with the booking system. Yeah. But what I see is almost a yin and yang or tug of war between different elements here. And you mentioned about advanced bookings, online bookings, and yet I can see how one would take away capacity from the other. If you were, what would your suggestion be as the number one priority here? Because there are about 5 different elements in terms of how booking, what should be done with booking, and yet we know there's limited capacity. And I'm sure if you did one, then the others would fall to the wayside because there just wouldn't be the ability to accommodate. So what's the number one booking priority?
Sorry, I'm hard of hearing, so I'm going to try to answer your question, and if I haven't answered it, you'll follow up. I apologize. I would agree, first of all, with the position that there are decisions to make, that one thing affects another in terms of your outcomes that you're looking for. In terms of the overall process for booking, I think it's also part of the discussion around the eligibility criteria for paratransport that you also need to have concurrently to make that work. Once you can establish what your priorities are within booking, then you can help to better implement an easier booking process. What I can tell you is that the status quo is not very efficient right now. In the past I've had to try to call, and if you call 1 minute too late, you can't get your ride and so forth, and it really is very difficult to plan your lives around that. So if I were to look at some priority areas that I would think about, would be things like employment, medical appointments, those type of things that are very important. I do want to emphasize, however, that social portions are very important to enhancing community integration and so forth, but that I do think that needs to be part of a broader discussion, and once we have that, we'll be better able to answer your question. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, and you know what, I think that's a perfect answer. So can I just take that over to Mr. Manconi for a second? The report basically says we're analyzing this, and the number one complaint I think we get is not even about the vehicles, but the booking system. And I don't know if you would agree with that. I think there are more issues with the booking system than the vehicles we've used, even though there are lots of complaints. How are you going to try and mesh this all together? Because there's probably a cost involved. I think your people are analyzing that. But how do you sort of respond to what Nathan's come up with here?
Thank you. Good question. What I told the customer group when I was at the consultation session, and what I've told everyone as I've had an opportunity to talk to the customers, and what's in our priority plan, business plan that you approved, was that paratransport needed some strong focus and attention on, and the priorities were clearly going to be, we had a contract that was coming to expiration. You approved bringing that service in-house. That was a major strategic decision that needed to be made because that clock was ticking on that one. You then had a 2-year capital envelope that had sat for vehicle replacements. Nothing had been done on that, so we engaged the strategy that we're getting very positive results to, because we're asking our customers to look at help us design the vehicle. And by the way, the try before we buy comment is certainly on for that. It's a great idea, and we're going to work with Jeff Byrne and his team to look at that. The third priority was to implement quick wins on booking. There are some very valid concerns. We know that there's some issues there. We do need to manage expectations. There's a cost to creating capacity, and you approved some good decisions in the past where you've used taxis to offset the load, and we're continuing to focus on that. You'll recall the budget, we didn't ask for additional funds in there. We said we will channel growth towards taxi. We need to get those three things aligned, and then we can start to talk about where would you like to take para as a service in the future. And I have no problem sharing with the Commission. I've told people there's going to be some very difficult decisions that need to be made about eligibility criteria that other jurisdictions have done and some have not, about who's eligible for para. There's a cost attached to these decisions, so we need to wrap our heads around that. That's further down the road. So the three priorities were, what are we going to do with the contract? We needed vehicles replaced, and are there any quick wins we can do on booking to assist with some of the concerns that we have here? We're very open to some of the advanced booking things that other jurisdictions have done, but there is a pent-up demand for this service, and there's a cost to that. So we're, as you know, in my style, we manage to our budgets, and so we don't want to knee-jerk, open up capacity that doesn't exist, that we don't have funds for.
Thank you for that.
I would concur.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much. Our next speaker is Therese Dupuis, and Ms. Dupuis will be followed by Daniel Oiko.
So, where's the microphone?
Good morning, Ms. Dupuis. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. Please
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I want to say thank you for having the opportunity to attend the meeting, para meeting on December 11th. I was most encouraged, and I was very impressed with the comments. And of course, I know there's a lot of negativity and positiveness. I'm a positive person, but there is a problem, as we all know. I am totally blind. I cannot see the front of my hand. I cannot use, unless I'm with someone, I cannot use para, even though there are free passes. I've had people say, well, wheelchair people say to me, but you can have a free pass to get OC Transpo. Yeah, well, that's another story. You'd have to walk in my shoes. Anyway, the thing I want to mention is, I'm a little concerned maybe with the advanced booking. I would like to see that happen, but I think we'd have to be careful with that too, because if we had a 5-day booking or 7 days, well, there might be people that would book for on Monday and Tuesday. I believe the head honcho there, whatever the name was, mentioned that, and that sort of brought that to light to me, that if they booked maybe Monday and Tuesday for Friday, well then what happens on Thursday if I need to go and have a trip on Friday? You see what I mean? However, but my big bone of contention, and I want to mention to you, I put it to the test this past Wednesday. I had to go to my ophthalmologist. Now, as a blind person, I'm not a wheelchair person. I cannot call before 9 o'clock. Well, you know what I did Wednesday? I got on the phone at 8:45. I redialed 7 times. And then about 10 to 9, I got into the system, and then I kept my fingers crossed that they wouldn't pick up my call because I'd be before 9 o'clock. But I like to test the system. At 9:06, I could not get anything. I had to be at my ophthalmologist for 10 o'clock. I could not have 8 o'clock. I couldn't have 8:30. I couldn't have 9. I couldn't have 9:30. I even tried to see 10. You know, there's something wrong there. 6 minutes into, and with all due respect with people in wheelchairs, yes, people, I know they use the big van. I've been in the big van so many times by myself. Yes, they take maybe 2 or 3 chairs, but what about the side seats? What about the cars? I mean, is there nothing available for a person like ourselves? I'm talking on behalf of the Canadian Council of the Blind, by the way, and there is a huge, huge problem. But then wheelchairs can't get in the cars. I know there's the van there that I've been in that one where one wheelchair goes in, and but then there's a couple of other vacant seats, and so, you know, I really have a difficulty. I've been taking para for 6 years at least, and might even be 7. And I never experienced such a problem as we have had since last September. Yes, we're told, yes, there is more people getting on board, yes, this and yes, that. I appreciate that. It cannot be that bad. Because really, I always felt I was well served most times. But it has been a real nightmare for us as blind or visually impaired and the like. I could talk till tomorrow morning about this, but I only have 5 minutes. But in any event, I just hope that... keep my fingers crossed, but I think I made my point when I said 6 minutes after 9 o'clock, I can't believe everything was booked in 6 minutes. Could someone answer that?
Not me. Thank you. Thank you. But thank you for being here. We appreciate the comments, and we certainly appreciate all the comments from the consultation, and we understand the gravity of this issue and how important it is to everyone, and obviously getting this right will be very important. Mr. Manconi, to the specifics of the current booking system, is maybe...
And it is a wonderful service, though. Thank you, you know. I want to thank you for that, though.
Yeah, we certainly understand how important this service is and getting it right and being able to address the needs of all of the users. Mr. Charter's coming to the table.
Yeah. Could I just make one little point? Don't ever take away the para voucher, the taxi vouchers. I order them every so often. And just to give you an example, on Thursday, I had to take, if it was $41 each way for a taxi fare, but I had the para books, and so that meant it was, one book of $40, that's $24. You get it for $24, thank heavens, plus $1. So my taxi cost there and back $50. I can't afford that. I am a pensioner, you know, but I do appreciate the taxi vouchers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Charter is going to speak to the issue that you raised. Mr. Charter.
Madam Chair, just a couple overarching comments, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Charter. In terms of demand, the increase has been significant. It's 12% over the last 4 years in demand. Now, we do have refusals. The unaccommodated trips have only increased 1% since 2008, and that's because of the great work that Mr. Charter and his team are doing to create efficiencies. But yes, we do have customers that unfortunately we have to turn down, and Mr. Charter can speak to that in terms of the 9 o'clock situation.
Madam Chair, paratransport experiences the same volume of service as our conventional service does. So we do see increased ridership or demand for increased ridership in the AM and PM peaks. So there are times where we do have available trips at alternative times, but they don't fit with a customer's medical appointments or times that they need to travel. So it may be a situation where we do have trip capacity at alternative times. We also do see that there are certain days of the week in which we have higher trip demand, and Wednesdays being one of the busiest days.
Unfortunately, Ms. Dupuy, we don't allow a back and forth here, but I'm sure Mr. Charter would be happy to speak with you offline, and thank you very much for being here today. We're going to move on to our next speaker, Daniel Oiko, and Mr. Oiko will be followed by Catherine Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of the questioning here raised a few questions. Anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for that consultation. I was in it myself. I loved it. It's great to see that, you know, you're taking the users' opinions and feedback in. I haven't used paratranspo in several months myself, doctor's orders, because I've now lost a disc because of the bouncing in the buses. So I have to wait until hopefully the new ones are a little more easier. The issue I'm finding here, and I didn't see it in any other reports or hear anything, is the financial part. People with disabilities, they face financial troubles all the time and all this stuff. And I'd like to know, you know, it'd be nice to know why finance has to be brought up every time when it comes to people with disabilities, because I don't hear it with people with no disabilities on regular transit. It's like, because to me, it's telling me that the City of Ottawa is considering people with disabilities to be a burden because they have to provide transportation for them. Maybe there should be some rephrasal in there when it comes to, because we pay in many ways where non-disabled do not. There's no barriers at all for them at all, but there is for us. I had a barrier this morning. A number 5 drove right past me, waving down. I called it in. So that's one barrier there. But I'm hoping that the new buses come out, and I hope there's a positive aspect there, better suspension, you know, an easier ride. Also, when it comes to the seating, as I heard from the last speaker, when I've called in, I've asked about the bus being full. And I asked, were the seats filled as well? And they said, yes, they are. Not once since I've been using Para has that ever happened when I booked in, meaning there's 4 empty seats that could have been used by a blind person, a person with a CNI dog, all that kind of stuff. So to me, they got 3 chairs in there, and the seats are completely empty. Wasted space if you got somebody who is blind and needs a ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oracle. Seeing no questions, Commissioner Blowis.
As a result of the comment that was just made, there's some numbers that were just sent to us, and I don't know if they were actually originally generated by your department, but it's showing that these vehicles are running 50% of the time with only 1 passenger. I don't know the accuracy of those numbers, but apparently the original data comes from your department. If those numbers are correct, that does seem to be a very inefficient use of those vehicles when they're and I realize it's very hard to balance off. You've got 5 seats, how many passengers can you get in, and sometimes you're going to get 1, sometimes 5. But what's the attempt being made to try and get more, let's say, more seats filled? I was going to use another expression, but that'll do.
Yes, Madam Chair, it's a good question. Mr. Chart and his team optimize the vehicles because what we don't want, we try not to have passengers on there for more than an hour, and we also want to get them to their destination within an hour. So it's all those variables, and you may see a vehicle with more than 1 passenger or not, depending on all those variables that go into this mix. Remembering that, you know, we're also encouraging as many customers, if they can, to use conventional too. So it's that balance.
But still, if the vehicles at 50% of the time, and those are numbers that have been sent to us, only have 1 passenger, there's a lot of capacity that's being unused. When we hear the booking issue can be partly addressed, or the booking issue would be partly addressed by better use of those vehicles.
Yes, and Madam Chair, you're going down the path of the big policy report that we need to have in terms of eligibility criteria. And what is the goal? Is the goal to transport anybody that requests a service, or is the goal to have eligibility criteria? And eligibility criteria is a sensitive topic, because what you get into is a medical appointment more important than a social appointment, and how do you have that dialogue? Because then you're optimizing the vehicle and maximizing how many passengers you're carrying. Are you prepared to have longer trips than an hour average, and so forth? So I don't have the answer for you, Councillor. It is a very good point. It is about optimizing those vehicles, and then further down the road we have the policy discussion if Commission wants to.
Is that it, Councillor? Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Oikel. I just wanted to address one point that you raised. Just want to be clear, OC Transpo has faced major budget constraints for all of our passengers over the course of our mandate, and that's why we undertook the route optimization. We created efficiencies in the system throughout. It didn't target paratransport or anyone else. It was an efficiency exercise that was across all of the transit riders and groups. So just wanted to be clear about that, and thank you for being here this morning. Our next speaker is Catherine Gardner, and Ms. Gardner will be followed by Chris Bradshaw.
Thank you very much. I attended the session, and I'm grateful that the session was there. It was a great session. Thank you very much. There are a number of things that did come up. There was also a number of things that didn't come up in the report. For one thing, they talk about the number of people having frustrations of calling in and not getting bookings. But there was nothing that I saw in the report about cancellations. I took paratransport this morning from Bell's Corners to Vanier with my granddaughter. We were the only ones on the bus. During our trip from the west end to the east end, 2 drivers called in saying that there were cancellations at the door. This is happening big time, and it's very frustrating because if people were to cancel ahead of time, maybe we could fit more people on the buses. There is an interactive voice number that people can call, and it would be nice if there was something that maybe when we call to make our booking that the dispatch or the booking agent could say, just a reminder that if you need to cancel your booking, you can call this number 24 hours a day. You don't even have to talk to anybody. You don't even have to feel like you have to justify why you have to cancel. Just call it up and cancel. That way it would eliminate some of the hassles. And especially like if I'm on a bus and I have to go to work or I have to go to a medical appointment and we have to go and pick up somebody else and we get all the way down there, find out that they're not there. We could have been to where I needed to go a lot faster. The other thing is that, rural to rural areas, that's a big problem too. I know for myself, if I don't live in a rural area. I live in Bell's Corners, but if I want to go to a rural area and then I want to go to another rural area, I can't do it. I have to go to a rural area from Bell's Corners, then back to Bell's Corners to take another bus to go back to another rural area. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The other thing is in regards to the fares for companions. I know I've raised this, I think it's 7 years now that I have been raising it, that my grandchildren have to pay full adult fare. My grandchildren, when they were 5 years and under, they paid nothing. As soon as they turned 6, I pay full adult fare. Almost every Monday morning I take paratransport with my granddaughter to go to school. She has to pay 3 tickets. Now she has no income. Yet she's paying more than a senior, she's paying more than a youth pass holder, paying more than a community pass holder. That's unfair for a 6-year-old. She's now 9.5, and I've been fighting this since my grandson turned 6. He's now 13. I don't know how many children are on paratransport. I don't think it's going to be a financial hardship for people to be able to look and say, hey, look, children, do the children's fare the same thing as on the OC Transpo. And in regards to the buses, the suspension is really bad. That's something, even my dog, he now sits up on the seat with me because he doesn't like the bouncing around. And that's another problem too. I had the bus show up one time. My granddaughter, I, and my dog were on the bus. The driver was told that he was supposed to go and pick up somebody else, but he couldn't because it was marked down that my dog was a companion. And my dog was marked down as having a seat. I told him, I said, look, call it back in. My dog is on the floor. You know, there's things like that that need to be worked out. There's little silly things that need to be worked out. But overall, the service is great. I couldn't get through. Every Monday morning when I take my granddaughter, I'm on the bus when I have to try to call paratransport. Excuse me. And I very seldom get through until I get to her school. This morning I called at 8:30, and I was able to get through. Now, I don't know whether they have caller ID, and no, okay, don't refuse her. But, I'm able to get through at 7:30 and I don't have a problem getting bookings. But I know that if I wait till 9 o'clock, and I feel sorry for my, fellow paratransport users who cannot wait or have to wait till 9 o'clock and cannot get it. If people were to use the cancellation, we might be able to get more people on. If we were able to use paratransport to get us to a transit station, that might help to increase service too, because not everybody needs the buses the whole way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gardner. Mr. Manconi, do we have a cancellation line in place currently?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do, and we need to promote it better. And so that's a takeaway from today. We'll work with Mr. Charter and his team to do that.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Ms. Gardner, for being here. Our next speaker is Chris Bradshaw, and Mr. Bradshaw will be followed by Karen Scott. Mr. Bradshaw, just to press the button.
There we go.
You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to speak because I'm represent sort of a casual user, myself and my wife. My wife had a knee operation last year, so we're people that use the regular bus system. But during episodes in our lives, maybe up to 10% of the population, because of illness or because of injury, recovery from surgery or something, we are put into the different particular category in terms of transit, not being able to walk to a bus stop. And coupled with that was, because it was a year ago, was also during the depths of winter. And so we had this experience, and I thought it would be useful for you to know what they were. The first thing I'd have to say is that the booking system is an awkward thing. You have to not only mark in your calendar that you have a medical appointment, but you then have to put a marker in the day before at 9 o'clock when you're usually having breakfast and so forth and getting dressed, that you will hear and remind you that you have to phone by a certain time in order to book that particular trip. Another difficulty is knowing when you're going to be finished the appointment. If you're going to the hospital and you're meeting in a long queue of people meeting in one of the modules there with a specialist, you don't know that you can get away on time. We also found that the buses didn't often, sometimes a bus would actually arrive early, and we found out that he had left by the time we got down, as us being no-show. The waiting areas at the hospital was very awkward. It's a very cold corridor because of their technology they use to open the doors and so forth, which means that the driver has to come further in order to announce him or herself. People are spread out more because of their different tolerances to cold. Also, the general attitude that you can book for repeat bookings far further in advance than you can for one-off bookings is really a form of discrimination against those one-off bookings, which may in fact be more important. A person booking every day to go to a mingle hall gets in a sense a higher priority than the person who has a very important appointment for medical purposes or a job interview or whatever. The next thing I would say is the vehicles. It was very funny to be going from a system for us able-bodied folks that is low floor with no steps in and then ramp and so forth, and then to go into these buses, since my wife wasn't in a wheelchair, we used the steps, to have 3 steps up and the maneuvering inside the bus. It was quite an interesting thing. And then we heard, besides the awkwardness of getting into it, we heard drivers complaining about the effect on their bodies of the poor suspension system on the buses. So I would say that this is long overdue to you to look for an advanced vehicle with the low floor technology and better suspension systems. Finally, the comment about demand, the fact that you do have there's an increasing demand for the system and there is a limited supply. I would suggest that it's good for you to do in your corporate planning to look at such factors as the committee I'm on with the Ottawa Seniors Transportation Committee is looking at. The first thing would be hospital parking costs. How many people who have access to a car will say, I'm not going to use it to go to the hospital because the parking at $3.50 per half hour, or fraction thereof, is in effect. And some of those people, if they can qualify for para, may in fact use the para service for that type of destination because of the high cost of parking, which, by the way, is double the cost you pay at a meter in downtown Ottawa. And the second thing I would say, we have a walking committee now, is looking at the winter walking. The fact is that for regular transit, no matter how low floor your buses are and so forth, and how friendly they are for people in wheelchairs and other disabilities, you have a problem of reaching the bus stop. this interesting report earlier today about the system of, or the effort you went through to analyze the problems with the storm. Mention was made of all the available resources we put on the roads. I would say that there was also a need for available resources to be on the sidewalks at that time, since it occurred during the time a great number of people were commuting. And walkers often complain that the sidewalks are not cleared to the same standard, timing-wise or getting down to the surface as it is on the roads, and that contrary to the City of Ottawa having a policy to favor walking over the other particular modes. So I would say look at the demand situation, try to overcome that problem, look at the vehicles, and the booking system, I think, needs to be evened out, and it becomes just sort of a gymnastic exercise of getting you to call and get those few seats that might be available after the long-term bookers, repeat bookers, have done their thing. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bradshaw. Any questions? Our next speaker is Karen Scott. Welcome, Ms. Scott, and you have 5 minutes to address the Commission.
Good morning. I'll add my voice to people who have commended OC Transpo for encouraging community consultation, and I want to emphasize that we're all so pleased with the idea of new buses and the idea of an alternative booking system. A lot of us, I think, have concerns about the number of rides that will be available once the booking system is up and running. Last year, 85,000 people could not secure a ride on paratransit, and I appreciate that sometimes are more free than other times, but when your doctor's appointment is at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, it's at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. For neurology appointments, there's a $50 penalty if you have to cancel that. It's kind of a no-win situation that there's a limited number of rides and there's a huge demand. I'm wondering if at this time, if consideration needs to go into how much the budget is for paratransport. So ridership has increased 12% in the last 4 years, but the budget has not increased at all. I'm just wondering if there's consideration about increasing the budget.
Is that it, Ms. Scott? Thank you very much. Obviously, all of our budget issues are addressed during budget deliberations. I think the paratransport budget is currently about $31 million, and we did hear from Mr. Charter that demand has risen 12%. So clearly this consultation and the work that we're going to do will be very important in determining how we provide the service and ensure that we're meeting the needs of our customers. When will we hear back?
Madam Chair, we have a report that I believe will be coming at the beginning of Q3 with regards to the advanced booking. So we present that information at that time.
Okay, I see there's some questions. Is that from Ms. Scott? No. Okay, questions to staff now, starting with Commissioner Reglai.
Thank you. I'm just looking at your conclusion, and it follows up on what the Chair was asking. You said that you're analyzing the feedback and you're going to get back and share the information with stakeholders by the end of Q1 2013. That's now, right? So is this the sharing, or are you going to be coming back to us as one of the stakeholders, or do you consider us one of the stakeholders?
Madam Chair, this report is providing the details that came out of the stakeholder consultation sessions. This represents the key findings, but there is a wealth of other information is available as well, but to a much less degree.
So when will you be coming back to us for substantive decisions on where we're going with Paratranspo?
For the advanced booking, we will be coming to the Transit Commission in, I believe it's September of this year.
Well, I'm going more to Mr. Manconi's comments. He seems to have repeatedly gone back to the issue that the real issue here, or the underlying issue, is making some tough decisions about priority. And is that going to be in conjunction with the advanced booking, or If it's not, because it's tied to booking, so how do we deal with advanced booking without dealing with the issues that you keep raising about priority?
Madam Chair, the advanced booking, I'll call it quick wins that Mr. Charter and his team have been tasked with are the stakeholders identifying any opportunities that we can implement with their support? So if we get into any new rules that they would endorse as a customer base that we'd bring to you to say this is how we're going to modify our advanced booking things, and it creates some ideal conditions. With respect to an overarching policy report, funding report, projections, forecasts, that's not yet in our work plan, and so we have to figure out when exactly we'd have the capacity to do that and when we'd bring that forward. We have a business plan update coming to you in May, I believe, which will be talking on narrowing our focus because of the Confederation line, but we can also talk about para in the future in terms of when we best could bring that forward.
Okay, so not to criticize what you're doing, what you're proposing to do, but if I understand, another way to describe the quick wins, as you put it, is essentially a Band-Aid. In your opinion, that's not going to fix the system. We've got to deal with the priority issue at some point in the not-too-distant future. Is that accurate?
Correct, with the cautionary note that it's about policies, prioritization of trips, customer groups, endorsing that, yes, if you can use conventional, you'll be using conventional rather than using para capacity. What takes precedence, a medical appointment versus a social, all those things, that's down the road. The Band-Aids, I'll say I think it's more than Band-Aids because it will come from the customer base of some things that help them in the morning and during peak period would be coming in Mr. Charter's report that he refers to.
But how far down the road are you on those more substantive? If I understand, you're saying it's not in your plan at this point. You need direction from this commission to put it in your plan? Like, what are you asking us to do this morning to aid you in fixing the system long term?
Actually, I'm not asking anything yet because we don't have the game plan on the longer-term strategy because of the priorities that I spoke to Commissioner Blowis's question earlier on, that the focus was on what are we doing with the service, external versus internal, the vehicles, and then the quick wins on the booking. That's our focus right now. The longer-term policy report is not on the work plan yet. It will be. I just don't know when.
Okay, I get that, but I'm going to push you a little bit more on it. Do you anticipate coming back to us this year, or are we looking at this coming in 2014?
Madam Chair, it will not be this year based on what we have with the Confederation line, and the question becomes, do we even have capacity in 2014? Because by mid this year we'll know exactly the scope and scale of the impacts of the Confederation line, and just to manage expectations on the business plan, I've said it when I gave you the last update, there will be a very strong focus and limited capacity for things other than the Confederation line coming up in May. So I'm not trying to be difficult. I don't have the time frame because we haven't analyzed when the capacity will occur for that.
Oh, and I appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eglon. Commissioner Crew.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. Seeing Mr. Charter's present, I recognize there's a linkage between this issue in this report and the inquiry that I've filed and received a response to today regarding, as an interim measure, advanced email booking, particularly for those who were hearing impaired that did not have access to a TTY, which may be a fairly limited segment. If just very quickly, in the response to the inquiry, you did note, related to this issue, that to institute an interim email booking system would require approximately a 0.5 staff equivalent. Could you just quickly comment for the Commission on why that is?
Madam Chair, the request for the additional FTE would be to handle it'd be ensure that we don't impact the number of staff available to handle the calls during our peak periods. So we'd be looking at acquiring an additional staff member so that we can ensure that we're responding to all those calls that are coming in in a timely manner. So I would not want to, as it's already been outlined as an issue for our customers, I would not want to further exacerbate the problem by increasing waiting times and call times.
And as I understood it, too, part of the issue was that it wouldn't simply be sending in an email and having a booking, that there would necessarily, depending on availability, then need to be a dialogue back and forth. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair. There would need to be a dialogue back and forth to ensure that the trip was available at the requested time. And if the trip wasn't available at the requested time, there would need to be a series of emails back and forth to find a time that would that we have available that would also match the needs of the customer.
And I recognize that in this report, specifically the issue of technologies for booking, if you will, as a part of the advanced booking issue, was canvassed. There's a note here that there were 16% of people that were suggesting a variety of technologies. In the feedback that we received from the para users as a part of this consultation, did they have was there a discernible preference in terms of the technology they would prefer to be able to book?
Madam Chair, we are hearing from our customers that they would like us to explore other opportunities such as online booking. So that is something that we are researching with a couple other properties as we speak.
And I know that we're not at the final recommendation stage yet, but rather certainly staff are examining the variety of options. And I trust that what I'm hearing is that at an initial stage there's a little bit of a staff preference towards going to an online booking model as opposed to the email booking model that I had suggested.
I believe that is correct. I think there would be more of a benefit to an online booking model. So staff presently are focusing on looking at advanced booking, the improvements that can be made for our customers there. And then once we've provided an update to the Commission on that and sought the direction, then we'd be looking at other ways in which we can improve the booking process. I'd also like to take a second, actually, I need to provide a point of clarification. I did state that a report would be coming to the Commission in September of this year, Q3. It's actually planned for June of this year, so a little sooner than I originally indicated.
That was one of the 2 points that I wanted to clarify, was when the report, in terms of a recommendation about online booking or advanced booking, would be coming back. So that's the report that will be coming back in June, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, Madam Chair. Report on advanced booking will be coming forward in June.
Okay, I look forward to receiving that report. And then just one comment that's been plain from all of the delegations today. Is there clearly going to be a tension between allowing particularly advanced online booking? It seems to me that the greater a period of advance, particularly online booking that we allow, the more is going to be the need to also have something to address those urgent medical appointments, perhaps. Because what I'm hearing is perhaps that with advanced booking, it's going to fill up fairly quickly, and if you get a doctor's appointment a few days before, of course there's a way in which that maybe should be a priority. So preserving some capacity for those urgent trips, I think would be a wise idea to look at the same time that we consider any form of advanced booking. And I look forward to the report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Crew. Commissioner Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to talk about the bookings as well. And I've had one of the people who is hearing impaired in my area said she tried the email, and the delay in getting the response is so high. And I think when you get somebody who calls in, you talk with them, you go back and forward in the discussion at different times and things. That takes a lengthy process as well. So I don't see why that process on emails shouldn't fit into the system as it goes along. Yes, it takes time, but so does everything else. So that's just a comment more than a question. But on the other, in looking at the taxis were mentioned as an alternative, but they're very expensive. They're more expensive than just using this regular para system for most people. So people with limited incomes really can't use that. So I think we've got to take a look at that as depending too much on the taxi system. I just think it's something I'd like you to take a look at as you're doing the analysis of our para system, because it does mean some people can't get out at all. And the other question, which a real question, is on, I heard at one point some time back that up to 40% of bookings were no-shows. I don't know if it's that high anymore, but it still was very high. And that was when we had a more advanced booking, and that's why it went to a shorter time period. But I'm just wondering if we could look in for doing an automated system of having an automated callback, because if I'm going to a doctor's appointment that I've made months ahead, they call a few days ahead of time to remind me, which is a good thing because I forgot to put it on the calendar. And if we had some sort of way that we could check, or if the driver is going to do a pickup that's a little distance away, even in that way, if there could be an automated call to that person, are you still want this trip? And if they cancel, immediately send it to booking so that maybe somebody else on the waiting list could get it. It's something, if you're bringing in an automated system, you should be able to do. Is that going to be looked at in what you're looking at? Not in the short term, at least in the longer term?
Yes, Madam Chair. Those are some of the options that we're looking at as we further automate our system and bring in additional technology. Part of our difficulties is with the contracted taxis, but through some of the technology that we're looking at implementing with them as well, we would have access to more real-time information, which links in with our scheduling software, which would allow us to leverage some efficiencies there. So yes, that is something that we are actively working through from an operational perspective.
And would that include an automated confirmation system?
Yes, it would. That is something that we are working on. I don't have a time frame for that, but it's something that I believe we committed through also through the older adult plan.
Because I think that would improve your capacity, which is something we really desperately need to do. I think that there's a lot of difficulty with the booking, and I'm looking forward to that report in June, and I suppose further reports as you get further on, because I think it is one of the biggest problems that users have and one of the biggest frustrations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions on this report? Seeing none, I think, Mr. Manconi, that the work that has been done to date has been very good, and I think the public consultation with the stakeholder groups has been very valuable. Now what we have to do is figure out how we move to the next steps in this process and find more equitable treatment in the system and address the issues of suspension and bookings and all of those as we move forward. So maybe you and I will discuss this and get back to the Commission. I'm wondering if a working group would be helpful at all to work through some of these issues. But we can talk about that and maybe report back at a later date. Seeing nothing else received on the report. Item number 8, there is a presentation and there's also a public delegation. So I will turn this over to who? Mr. Manconi or to Mr. Scrimger?
Madam Chair, Mr. Scrimger is going to take you through the presentation.
Perfect.
Good morning, Madam Chair. We're here today to report on the transit system performance during the fourth quarter of 2012. So you've seen the quarterly report before, and it contains, as it always does, information on ridership, on-time performance, collisions, fuel consumption, ride comfort, service delivery, the mechanical failure rate of our buses, and the use of our park and ride lots. We've made a couple of changes in this report, where one is pending and the one other change. The Commission asked us to include also injury rates. We're still working on the best way to collate and report that data. It's currently held in a form that's not easily tabulated into statistics, and we'll be reporting back to you on that. The second is that we're not reporting, beginning in this report, the operating cost per bus kilometer by quarter. We'll still be reporting it in the annual report, but we're also looking at trying to find a better measure of productivity. We did report to you operating cost in the financial reporting, but this is per vehicle kilometer, and we're been making changes to the number of articulated buses and double-decker buses we have as a proportion of the total fleet, and these numbers are just not stable and comparable from quarter to quarter because of some of those changes, and also because of some of the charges that we have which are not evenly distributed through the year. So Our main highlights of this, we've got the second highest ridership ever for a full year in 2012. We have improvements in on-time performance, and we've also seen that there's a much lower collision rate. So first of all, in the fourth quarter, we carried 27 million customer trips, quite a high number, but as we've been talking all through 2012, that is down 2.5% from what we saw in the fourth quarter of 2011. For the full year, we carried 101 million customer trips, still over 100 million customer trips, second only to the 2011 ridership, but down 2.4% from what we saw in that year. So we ask ourselves, why is ridership down? And as we've talked about earlier in the year, the two chief causes seem to be there are fewer people working for the federal government and there are fewer young people working. We did see increases in employment in construction and warehousing in Ottawa, but those people, because of the work they do and because of where their jobs are located, are less likely to be transit customers. We still do have healthy ridership. We still have very high ridership for a city of our size and of our type. And after Montreal and Toronto, much larger cities, we have the highest transit ridership per capita in the country. We put together this chart here to show that there is a long-term trend, and you can see that in some years we are above and some years we are below. I don't know if the pointer will work at this distance, but the red line joins together all of our observations of ridership in each year. This big dip here is the 2008-2009 transit strike, and the dotted area above that is where we thought ridership would have been had there not been a strike. So this is a calculated best fit line that matches the observations as closely as possible. And you can see that there are some years we're below that trend and some years we're above that trend. And 2011 is a year that we were above that trend. 2012 is a little below that trend, but very close to right on. And what this shows that is over a 15-year span of time, ridership is consistently and continuously increasing with a little bit of fluctuation. On-time performance, in the morning we're still at 71% on time, very similar to what we saw a year earlier. And in the afternoon, we're now at 60% on time for all buses across the system, up from 56% a year earlier. And quite a substantial improvement, which is described in more detail in the report, on the afternoon express service. One of the things that came up at preceding meetings was the possibility that there's a discrepancy between the on-time performance information as we summarize it in our reports and provide it to you here, and what the operators see as they're driving their buses. We have people working on that cooperatively between ATU 279 and other transit staff. They are closing in on determining what the causes are and what the ramifications are of those discrepancies. Once we have our new methods in place, we will go back and recalculate all of the historic numbers that we can and represent to you our trends over time. We've seen collisions going down from 2.62 per 100,000 bus kilometers to 2.47. That's a 5.8% reduction, and that's reasonably consistent among preventable and non-preventable collisions. We still have a reduction in both of those. Fuel use, fuel consumption, first of all, very consistent with the year earlier, 65.3 liters per 100 kilometers, and the total amount of fuel that we consumed, very similar to a year earlier, or almost identical, at 10.2 million liters. We may see some changes in that figure as we go into 2013, as we've switched more of the system to use double-decker buses. That may push fuel consumption per bus kilometer up, but the total amount of fuel consumed down, and the amount of fuel consumed per customer trip down as well. Some of the other highlights of what's in the report, The rated ride comfort, rated by our customer service experience program, the highest we've ever seen at 98 out of 100. Service delivery still very high, which is the percentage of trips scheduled that are actually operated. Mechanical failure rate quite low, and we've seen the park and ride percentage of use reduced because there was an increase in capacity over the preceding year. So to recap on the main highlights, the second highest annual ridership we've ever seen at OC Transpo, improvements in on-time performance, and a lower collision rate. So if you've got any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll start with Commissioner Farabee.
Thanks, Pat. I know you've got an enormous amount of data that you are pulling through and you distill down and you bring up and you report to us. And judging by your performance in all kinds of complex situations in the past, I have a great deal of confidence that you'll sort through it and pull through what's valuable. And I appreciate the highlight of the injury rates going forward. I think I'd like to ask for your help. I'm feeling a little, and this may be to you, John, a little frustrated around the topic of safety. About a year ago when you presented your business plan, there were 12 priorities. And none of them were safety, but in the body you talked about it being a priority. And we weren't able to find the funds for video cameras and such, but I did raise a concern at the time as far as if it's not front and foremost for us, we may lose track of it. We went through a spring when there seemed to be quite a peak in the accidents that we had on the road, and in September I raised the concern again around traffic, around accident reporting, around feeling safe on the bus, and around injury to people, and around severity and that kind of stuff. And Pat, you were very helpful in outlining what had been done in the past and what we hadn't done around benchmarking and other things like that, but that you were looking at it. And that you'd get back to me and we would have a discussion around what was appropriate. Well, about 4.5 months went by and we hadn't had the discussion. We hadn't been able, for whatever reason, you guys were working through stuff, you hadn't come back to me. So I wrote to you and said, I'm trying to get a handle on some of these issues around safety in terms of how we report them so that we can see. It's not a preoccupation with reporting. It's trying to get visibility on what's going on out there so we can make proactive, advanced decisions. So, and Pat, I appreciate you sent an email about a month later, and we've just talked offline on that. But in that intervening time, we had, I heard on the radio in All in a Day, stats from Dan Villeneuve reporting on what kind of criminal stats there were and things that had happened on the buses. And it felt to me that that's not where I should be hearing that information. It's not here. It's not on the website. We don't have that information, and we're here on the radio for the first time. And those are material impacts to how people feel on the bus and the safe riding of the buses. So I'm a volunteer citizen commissioner here. I believe I have a contribution to make. And I'm trying to find a way to bring issues to the fore to see action on them. My question to you is, what could I do differently to see a more positive response to issues when we raise them as a public commissioner?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the conversation that you and I had with the Chair about your involvement on the measures that we bring forward to the Commission, I want to acknowledge is a very healthy dialogue. It was very refreshing because, to quote you, you stated what everybody that knows or has read about balanced scorecards is you could have a whole bunch of metrics, but if the Board of Governors, yourselves, don't have the right metrics to direct to us on which levers we should push and pull, then you're just reporting on metrics. So Pat's mission is to engage the Commission and yourself specifically, because we're reaching out to you on two fronts. What metrics would the Commission like us to see reporting on a regular basis to the public? And other jurisdictions have done this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are some jurisdictions that on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, they tell their customers, here's our numbers. Pick 5 of them, whatever they are. Safety, performance, whatever the case may be. Then the other lens is, we have so many metrics at OC Transpo and corporately, and I had a good discussion with our Deputy City Manager, Steve Kanalakis, on what is it we want to report on, and how do those things help you drive the business? Because you're who we report to, and City Council. So Pat's mission is to look at the hundreds of metrics that we report through internally at OC Transpo, to this process, to the OMBI initiative, to the corporate initiative, and bring back a wholesome report to this commission to say, these are the opportunities, are these the appropriate ones that you'd like to see as the commission that provides the oversight to us? So I understand that dialogue has commenced with yourself, and I want you to, I want to acknowledge two things. Thanks for your patience. There's a lot on the plate. The list is long. I keep sounding like a broken record in that regard, but it is a long list. We're on a good path, I believe, at OC Transpo to get things put forward that meets your expectations and the customers. And the dialogue that you had with myself and the chair, I found very, very helpful, and will be used and will be instrumental in shaping the report that we bring forward this year to this commission. So if there's more that we need to add, I'm wide open to that.
I appreciate that, and I have tremendous confidence and have seen great success, and this is not a comment on progress to date. My question was really around, I felt like I raised it a couple of times here and wanted to get at it. It's now been 8, 9, 12 months have gone by and to get it, and I appreciate we're there. In the future, I'd like to find out how it is that we accelerate that process if we have a concern, so that that we're not addressing it now after there was an incident and it looks like we're behind the issue when we could have been out in front of the issue. And so, I will raise it more emphatically next time or whatever it is, but I appreciate the work that is going into it now, and I look forward to engaging on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fairby. Commissioner Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to raise a couple of points with the ridership. One of the things we get riderships on an annual basis, an increase, but it's never related to actually the population growth of Ottawa. So I don't know whether we are getting, we're obviously getting a bit of a drop from last year, but if we take the trend, is that trend related to our population growth, which has been fairly significant? Or are we getting the same number of people per capita, or is that beginning to drop, or is that beginning to grow? Is that possible to get that in future?
Madam Chair, we report on that annually up to this point, and you'll see it in the annual report, primarily because it's only every year that we can get a calculation of what the population of Ottawa is. We measure our ridership every day, but some of the other measures are going on less frequently. So transit ridership has not been growing as fast as the population, especially in the last year, where we've seen that there are more people working in Ottawa, but fewer of the people who do use transit and are likely to use transit are working, or they're changing jobs, and they're working more in suburban areas where the roads are less congested and the parking is less expensive, and where as a result the transit service isn't as competitive with cars. So we've seen increases in some job sectors, but not in the two that contribute most to transit ridership, which is federal public service and youth employment, and though both of those are down. But as it compared to population, we are not keeping up with population.
I think that's partly because the large percentage of increase in population is outside the Greenbelt, where our system is not as good as it is in the central part of the city. And I was wondering a bit, because I've seen the increase in ridership a bit in the Canada North Business Park since with the 93 system. We've had to add extra buses at rush hour, for example, and I've looked at those buses as they go by, and they're fairly full. Are we taking a look at the other employment areas outside of downtown, because there's several around the city, and seeing if we have adequate systems to get people there relatively quickly, because that's the key for people to take transit to get to work. If they're going to have to take 3 or 4 different buses and it takes them an hour and a half to 2 hours, they're not going to use it. And I think it's one way we might be able to improve our system, because they think employment patterns are changing, and it's something that I would like to see us doing some research on to try to determine if that's a better way especially for our work type systems that we have for express buses, et cetera, which are all focused on downtown.
Madam Chair, yes, we are always looking at how to provide the best service possible to major employment locations. Some of the things that play into that are that those locations that are in suburban areas are being designed much less appropriately to pedestrian use and transit use than they are for automobile use. You think of somewhere like Confederation Heights having much more pedestrian friction of crossing roads and having to walk across open distances than you see at somewhere downtown. The second is that we can do very well as we compete with other modes of travel in places like the downtown. If people are traveling from a central location to a true core downtown location, they're going to be provided with very good transit service. If they're traveling from a suburban location to a central location, we also have very good transit service for them. People who are traveling, however, from a suburban location to a suburban employment location, the number of people who are making that particular trip from that zone of the city to that other zone of the city is always going to be low, and is generally can't be as well served by something like transit that requires a certain number of people on each bus to make that trip successful. So we're doing okay with people traveling from central locations to major suburban employment locations like Canada North, but we're doing less well with people traveling from suburban locations to suburban locations.
Okay. They're not suburbs, but I'll get into that argument later. I'm going to get that changed in the official plan. They're actually satellite cities. The suburbs are inside the Greenbelt as well as outside. They're parts of cities, right? One of the things that I think that you should take a good look at is I know you've been looking at the origin destination study that was just done. It has shown that there are certain areas where there's the Canada-Stittsville area had the highest percentage of trips within the area and not going out and into it, which is an indication to me that there should be better connectivity within that area since people are already traveling within that area. But they also showed where the other things are. And I would hope that when we do the next round of major bus route changes that we'll be using that origin destination study to try to come up with some improvements in how we do it. Are you doing that right now?
It's an ongoing concern for us that there is so much internal travel in Canada and Stittsville, but the way that the road layout and the transit facilities have been designed, it's very difficult for us to provide that internal connections easily and conveniently for customers. It's something we continue to work on. It's something that is part of the work that our colleagues in transportation planning have been doing as they work on the future transitways and other transit facilities to be built in Canada and Stittsville, and it's something that we've taken a particularly close look at as we've modified with the councillors' involvement the route changes that went into place in September 2011. There's much better connections to and from Route 93 than there were previously.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about Canada, though. I'm talking about the whole city. The origin destination study is only done every 5 or 6 years, so I know you're looking at it all the time, but we now have a capsule that was done in this latest report that just came out a month or so ago, and that one's one I think that could help to steer us in the right directions. And I know you're part of that. I take it you're using it.
We are, and we will be using it continuously for all our work.
I would like to see how, in the next report for things, how that ties together, because I think that's one of the reasons we do those major studies is so that it will help us, not just for where we build roads, because that's only a small piece of it, but I think it's really just as important, if not more important, for transit routes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson. Commissioner Blois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know this is a pet peeve of mine, and when we talk about the on-time performance, I always dwell on the early ones, not the late ones. The late buses, there are many reasons for it, whether it's traffic. But I don't want to dwell on it too much because your slide indicates there's still discrepancies on the GPS data on buses and how we're generating the reports. Is that the way am I reading that correctly? Or
we're still working on the discrepancies that we talked about here, the last quarterly report, and the staff who are working on that are getting closer to finding the best way to resolve that.
Okay, so while while the trend on late buses was positive, when I'm looking at the early buses and I'm looking at there's been an increase from 13.2% to 14.5% on the early bus, 2 minutes or less, but even more important, 4.9 to 6.2% in the early buses, more than 2 minutes. That's one aspect that we can control, yet that seems to be going in the wrong direction. Is there a reason for that? Am I missing something here? In other words, I can live with late buses. It's the early buses, I think, that really cause more grief to our riders.
Madam Chair, of course, we understand that, and it is the same concern by everyone at OC Transpo. I don't think there's a negative trend happening here. But what may be happening here is that as we have been spending more time with the schedule writers working with recorded GPS data to make sure that the scheduled time along each trip is more exactly appropriate for the conditions that are true at that time, it may be that we deal with one problem, but it takes longer to deal with an early running problem. The problems of late running could be, are more likely to be congestion or a schedule that's not up to date with the conditions that are out there. The problems of early running aren't going to be related to that. They're going to be related to different things, and there's different types of attention you have to put onto them.
As a bus rider, the problem that happens is by running early, I'm guaranteed to miss the bus. If I show up on time, and whether I'm using my phone, whether I'm using web-based information, I'll show up at that bus stop. If it's early, if the bus is running early, I will miss it. And if it's a local bus, that's at least half an hour wait in between. The problem then is the bus starts, in order to play catch-up, waits after it's gone through a community, waits at the far end for the clock to run down, and then continues the route. But that doesn't help anybody who's waiting. I guess what I'm getting at is I think what I'm hearing you now say is that maybe our schedule needs to be adjusted to recognize let's say, the reality out there, i.e. the route can be run faster. But the reason it starts running faster is if nobody's getting on. The minute you're 30 seconds ahead, you're going to be picking up time, in other words, gaining time, because nobody's getting on the bus anymore. Am I explaining myself properly?
Madam Chair, yes, the councillor is explaining himself well, but it's not. That's not the situation we find ourselves in anymore. Since we have our modern GPS system, save for the concern we have about the discrepancy in presentation of data, that on-time performance is provided to operators continuously. Mm-hmm. There is no longer discrete time points along the route at which the operator is asked to stop and wait for the time to catch up. So in Councillor Blois's case, the Route 128 is leaving Blackburn Hamlet. If they are ahead of time, the operator should know that regularly at every stop and moderate his or her speed as they go through the community. If there is a problem with that, then it's a problem of the schedule not distributing the time properly through the community, or a problem, as we've discussed, with the presentation of the data on the screens on the buses. So it remains a concern that everyone knows exactly the implications of, but it is just a task to be.
But so how do we address that, though? Because there is an impact on the customer here. And how do we address that? How do we bring that number down as opposed to seeing it increasing?
Madam Chair, what Mr. Charter is doing with his team in the control room, and why the discussion we're having with ATU and operators on this discrepancy, is because the direction in the control room is when you get over a certain threshold, you direct the operator to pull over and to wait. And that's why you get those calls sometimes of, I've seen an idling bus, or I've seen a bus with only one or two people just sitting there. That is the operator being told by control, or they're seeing it on their clever device that they're getting ahead of schedule. Ahead of schedule is not good, exactly as you described it. And by working with the operators and the team, that dialogue becomes more positive, and operators start to comply. Now, you have to have confidence in the data, and that's why that issue that yourself and Mr. Craig Watson raised was important, and we quickly mobilized on that. You've got to have confidence in the system to do that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. By the way, just on a final comment, earlier on when you gave your report on the weather impacts on the last storm, and I was commending staff, and I meant all staff, and I might have singled out ATU. I meant the whole OC Transpo family. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Blois. Seeing no further questions, we did have one public delegation. I'm going to call her now, Ms. Gardner, Catherine Gardner.
Thank you very much. I'll make this quick again. The performance report is really good. I'm just wondering whether in the future other things could be included, which would make it even a better report, such as the elevator out of order. I've noticed that in the past month I've been getting the reports coming to me, and it has changed. You know, I'm seeing now, I'm getting a couple of emails a day where one will say the elevator's out of order, the next one will say it's back in service. Those are good news, you know, and that's something that I think, you know, OC Transpo should be praised with, and it should be showing up in the reports. I've noticed in the elevators out of order that they're lasting maybe half a day, where before we were seeing them, you know, 3 and 4 days out of order. The other thing is that with the elevators, up until the beginning of March, I was getting reports saying that they were out of order, but I wasn't getting reports saying that they were back in service. We're now getting that back, so that is really good. I'm wondering also in regards to the bus shelters clearance, whether we can get a report on, you know, in the future, like the next report coming out would have the big storm and things like that, on how many complaints came in about the bus shelters not being accessible and how many days. There's been a number of new power door buttons installed in the stations that, you know, if that could be added to the report, and how many are working, how many are broken, how many of the emergency buttons may be out of order, how many are being replaced, things like that. I know this is all accessibility stuff, but, you know, we are passengers too, and this affects how we get to the doors or the buses. If the power door buttons are not working, somebody else can push the door and walk through. But if somebody needs a power door, they may have to be waiting for somebody to come through to open it for them, and they may miss their bus. So, you know, and again, these are good news things, that there are improvements on those areas. And I'm just wondering if there's also, like, I know we're hearing in the report that about how the youth, the working and things like that, and, you know, other people layoffs. Is there any way of putting in the reports the number of people with disabilities using the accessible spots? You know, like, how often are those spots being used? Are they, you know, that could be coming by the drivers. I don't think it's, you know, something that has to be concrete, but, you know, that would be a good news story too, because it may get back to the disabled community. Hey, there's a lot of people using those spots. There's a lot of people with wheelchairs that are not afraid to use OC Transpo. I'm just wondering whether that might be something that can be in the upcoming report. Again, this is a good report, and I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. I think you make some good points. I mean, a lot of this information is addressed in the annual report, but maybe we need to look at putting more content into the quarterly report. So I think that's something that we can consider, and thank you for your input. We appreciate it. Seeing no further questions received on the Transit Services Performance Report? Received. Okay, notices of motion for consideration at subsequent meetings? Seeing none, inquiries? Seeing none, other business. Commissioner Crew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recognize it's exceptional to be, you know, sort of addressed at this stage, but just picking up on the comments that Commissioner Blois just made. When we were talking about the snow event, I certainly was guilty, and the Commission recognized the exceptional efforts of ATU 279, and in particular the operators. Mr. Manconi said it was a team effort, and looking out in the audience and seeing Mr. Watt's presence reminds me that specifically, and all too frequently, we don't mention the efforts of our other people that have contributed to the effort, including the members of ATU 1760, the Office of Administrative Staff, and those of QP Local 5500, the transit supervisors. And even within ATU 279, not only the operators, but also the mechanics and the para-operators. I'm sure that an event like that greatly extends the length of all of their day, and it's as a team effort. I just want to recognize the contribution of the entire team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other business? Seeing none, adjournment. Adjourned.